Hey, everybody, all three of you, of which one is probably TJ, or Mr. Yattering, I should say. I kept expecting to see a mustache or something appear on TJ's face there since he's the Yattering tonight. Um, so, welcome to yet another edition of the Tales from the Dark Side episode discussions. We are now starting the final season, season 4 of Tales from the Dark Side. We're going to cover 10 episodes tonight and 10 episodes next week, and then we will be officially completed with this. Um, and then I'm kind of going to take a break from the uh the horror type of stuff, although um you guys might consider this next series that I'm going to be talking about horrific in some respects, and I guess it is. I'm going to be covering Twin Peaks, the original series. Now, Uncle Bill has agreed to be on there discussing the episodes with me, but that does not mean that other people can't join in. I mean, TJ can join in on that if he wants to. Other people can join in if they want to. It'd be awesome to just kind of have a whole free for all and we, discuss a few episodes a night. I was looking at the episodes and there's actually not that many. I think there's 29 total episodes of the original series. And then I was telling Uncle Bill that we could discuss, like, have a bonus that last episode and talk about Fire Walk with Me as well. So, um, I got that coming up. Probably next Monday we'll start that because Uncle Bill said he had to go back and watch some of the episodes. And truth be told, I've got to go back and watch them. It's been a while since I've watched those original episodes as well. So I have my set Twin Peaks. What is it? The complete series and the missing pieces, or something like that. That I have. So got that coming up. I'm sorry. I want to apologize because I took a little bit of a break Monday. Kelly and I couldn't do the Hitchcock stream because Kelly is house sitting and doesn't have too good an internet where she's house sitting. So she didn't think she would be able to do it that Monday, this past Monday. So I think she and I are gonna do the Hitchcock stream on Tuesday. So me and Uncle Bill and whoever else wants to join in will be starting off the Twin Peaks episode discussion. Tuesday will be Hitchcock. And Wednesday, of course, me and TJ will be finishing up Tales from the Dark Side, season 4, with the last 10 episodes. I also have a couple of watch alongs coming up this weekend. Saturday is April 1st. So, of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to do a watch along for April Fool's Day. That's real original, isn't it? But last year, I think I did Slaughter High. So I thought we'll just do April Fool's Day this time. And then maybe next year I'll do Killer Party because Killer Party is another April Fool's Day type of horror film. So Sunday, we have the bonus watch along because it's the first weekend of the month. And we will be doing City of the Living Dead, aka The Gates of Hell. So everybody's invited to either be in the chat or if you want to come in live on the stream, you can do that. Now, April Fool's Day, we're probably going to have to watch our own copies of it because I was unable to find a copy online for free. but I did find one for City of the Living Dead, amazingly enough, and it is the complete version because I kind of scanned through it to make sure it had all the gore intact. Because what's the use in watching if we don't get to see all the gory puking up the intestinal tract and the flying maggots and the head drill scene? You got to see all that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and add TJ or Mr. Yattering. Hey, TJ.
Hi, Dana. How's it going?
Good. I was gonna explain too that I wanted to apologize for being away altogether. Hey, you got the Dead Pit shirt on. You going to CK's birthday bash later? I got invited.
Oh, is this his birthday? Is that on? They doing that on YouTube or are they doing it on the Patreon?
I'm not really sure. I'm gonna have to ask him because if he wants me to like actually come in there on the stream, he's gonna have to send me that dang link to do
Yeah.
that. So, hey, Texas. TJ, you said hi. 2 watchers, lol. Yeah, we might have a few more later, but I didn't tell CK or Wes when I was going to come on there because I mean, I remembered that we were doing this, TJ, but then whenever he asked me about that, it just totally slipped my mind. So I may be a little late coming into that.
Mm,
But as I always tell people, if you got to skip on out and go to CK's birthday bash, I will totally understand. I think TJ will understand.
I get it.
Because I think there's going to be some, he's going to be drinking alcohol, some kind of peach alcohol, evidently, and he's going to be doing some unboxings. And
Peach fancy.
yeah, he's getting all fancy on us, it seems like. Um, so, anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with these 10 episodes. So, we're going to cover Beatles through Payment Overdue. I think that's the first 10. TJ, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so. I'm so glad there's only 20 episodes.
Are you starting to get a little
No, it's just it seems like we talk a long time, and it's only. I mean, the first one was we did the whole season, and that was like
yeah, we learned from
we were in the
that.
1 o'clock hour there. I think Darren was getting up from sleep at that point. Um, yeah, like the 20 sounds. It seems pretty doable, especially rewatching them. There was less to watch.
Mhm.
Watching 10 is better than watching 12.
I think when I do the Twin Peaks, because there's almost 30 episodes,
Yeah.
um, and there will be technically if we have Fire Walk with Me. I was telling Uncle Bill that I thought we'd do like three streams of 10, and I think that would probably be a good number. And he told me I'd been talking about this for a little bit, and I mentioned it when we were both at the Lexington Comic Con meeting Sam Raimi. Um, were you TJ? Were you on Uncle Bill's stream where he was talking about meeting Sam Raimi?
Yeah, I watched that. I didn't watch it live, but I watched it
Yeah,
yesterday.
I watched it like after the fact too. I had no idea because I don't think Uncle Bill's, unless I just zoned out, I don't think he told us when we were in Lexington that that guy told him if he didn't cooperate, he was going to take his badge. It was like, man, what, not Uncle Bill, but the other guy was kind of an asshole because it didn't sound like to me that Uncle Bill was being belligerent or anything. He just wanted to know, well, hey, why are all these other people getting to stand around and take up space and I can't stand here? I
When
mean,
people get the authority, they
yeah,
turn into. It's too early in the stream to say dicks, but I already said it anyway. Turn into
that's okay. That's what this guy was. I mean, and like Uncle Bill said, the guy's just a volunteer. You feel like saying you're just a volunteer, dude. You're not, it's not like you're Sam Raimi or anything.
yeah.
for goodness sake, I'm glad he wasn't, because Sam Raimi was very nice on the other hand, and very gracious, and seemed appreciative that people were, I know we were paying $75 a pop for the autograph. Some people might say, well, of course he was appreciative, but I really doubt that he gets all that money. I'm betting his agent
Well,
gets that percentage, whatever that percentage is. And I, I just don't know all the ins and outs of that. I used to kind of get a little perturbed when I'd hear how much somebody was charging,
yeah.
but then I thought about it and I was like, this is Sam Raimi though. Um, some of these people that are charging enormous amounts were just basically background characters in a movie, and they weren't directors, they weren't frontline people. So I don't know who told them that it was justifiable to charge as much as some of these people were charging.
Well, when the Dawn of the Dead couple, the one of the husband passed away, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
they never charged like $80 for their autographs because
No,
they
they
were
did not. I
featured
think,
zombies in Dawn of the Dead. It's like,
yeah,
why
but
not more people like that instead of,
then, right.
they're not Robin Englund, they're not Sam Raimi, they're not Ted Raimi. I mean, I know Ted Raimi came to one of my local cons, and I just didn't want to spend the money on it.
Ted is charging more than he used to.
Of course.
By
Now
the
his brother's going out there, of course it's going.
by the time I met him, and I didn't, he was at the convention too with Sam this time around, but I had already met Ted, so I was like, I'm not gonna do that again. I'm not gonna shell out money again. And I didn't even get Ted's autograph when I met him.
Yeah.
I just got a picture, and that cost me enough with my own phone.
Yeah. Right.
But I guess those are the breaks. If I had been able to meet him earlier, then he probably wouldn't have been charging as much. But whatever. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the first episode, which is Beatles. This was the original air date was September 27th, 1987. So we're getting into late 80s now with these shows. No longer are we talking about 84, 85 or thereabouts. Hey, Darren. So I'm going to let TJ kick this off talking about Beatles.
So we got the Beatles, not the
Not the
we were
same.
from the '60s. We wouldn't be able to clear any of their music. I think didn't Michael Jackson buy their collection way back when, and
I think
Harrison got all pissed off about it because he was like, "Hey, why do you own it, Michael Jackson?"
yeah, why are you owning our music? I think he did, but it seemed like he was buying up a lot of the songs too that Paul wrote. So, which is kind of strange, but whatever.
Well, they always had fights over who wrote how much of a song, and even though, like, I don't know how many times they were all credited for a composition, but you get famous and like, I wrote this part. No, I wrote these 3 words. I get more credit than you do.
Yeah, I wrote the most important words in this song.
Yeah, so.
Hey, Dirk. Dirk's in here. Texas, Darren.
How do, Dirk? We got all the country boys.
Yep.
So, Beatles. It's an archaeologist, Arthur Hartley. He's not a nice guy. I mean, he's a thief, basically. By the way, there's a Robert Psycho Block written production, so that's good. This guy comes to him and says, you're going to be cursed because of stealing these artifacts from, just in general. But then he gets like one of the, I forget if it's like a Tutankhamun type of thing. This is the jewels, right? Didn't he get the jewels from the? There's always jewels in these things.
Yeah,
it's hard because there's like at least 2. No, there's about 3 archaeology type of stories in this first half, or 2 maybe. It's just like there's like they kind of mix together. We're gonna be talking about the other one later with
Oh, yeah.
with the we'll talk about it later. You talk about it. You take over a second. I'm just like
Okay. So I would like to just start off this by saying, like the first few times, or maybe first 2 or 3 times I watched this episode, I didn't much care for it. And yes, it is Robert Block did write it. And I'm not saying it wasn't well written, but I don't know, something didn't catch my fancy with this. But upon rewatching it again for the stream, I think it's grown on me
mm,
because I seem to like it a lot better this time. But TJ is right. The main guy is a bit of a jerk and he's a thief and just not, he's not murdering anybody, but he's still not a really good guy. And so a guy does show up and basically says, "Hey, dude, you're you're stealing stuff, and if you keep on doing this, then there's going to be a curse that's going to happen."
yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, get the hell out of here! I've got work to do. I'm busy." And so he basically throws the guy out. And so then he's focused on the mummy that he's got. And this is specifically what the other guy was talking about. You don't want to go messing with the mummy because if you start messing with the mummy and trying to steal things, then you're going to get cursed. But he continues not to pay attention and he finds these, they look like rubies in the eye sockets of this mummy, basically. And he's like, "Oh, there they are." And I believe that the guy that he threw out comes back again to warn him or shows up again and
Yep.
kind of hiding out, kind of scoping his place out. And so he's like, "I told you to get the hell out of here. I don't have time for this nonsense about curses and stuff. Just go away." So then he goes back inside his little place and he gets to thinking, well, if this guy is so insistent that I leave this mummy alone, there must be more than just the jewels I found in the eye sockets. And so he just literally punches his hands through the middle of the mummy and finds a little chest, looks like a little jewelry box almost. And in it is a bunch of real fancy jewelry. And also, he starts noticing these beetles. They start showing up. One crawls on his hand, and he's like, "Where'd that thing come from?" And, and then there's more of them, and then they seem to like disappear and reappear. And so I don't want to tell too much more because that's kind of getting into the twist or the stinger ending to this episode.
Yeah, it's less of a twist, more like just a comeuppance ending.
Yeah, like the EC Comics.
By the way, the Arthur Hartley is played by Rod McCary. If anybody remembers the priest Father Bob from Night of the Demons 2. He's that's who plays that character. He also played Father Bob in Leprechaun 3.
Oh wow,
he's like I don't know the whole dynamic of him reprising the character. I forget if maybe it's the same director or something. I don't know. It's just weird that he played Father Bob in two different genres. But yeah, I mean, yeah, especially watching this last season. I remember the episodes as I'm watching them, but at first I was like, I don't remember this one. But then I was like halfway through some of them, and I was like, oh, now I remember what's going on. And then I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen at the end. Right. But yeah, this one was all right. Like I said, I had watched the other ancient Egyptian one first, so I was like,
oh, gotcha.
I'm sort of like wasn't sure about the episode, and then I was like, oh, that's right. As you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what. I'm so helpful.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Then there's the ending where. Also another trivia thing. If you notice the mummy at the beginning, it is the same. Whether it's the same, it's probably the same. They probably repurposed it from the last car because it's definitely
okay.
one of the corpses. I think it's the Mrs. Crane corpse.
Okay. The lady that was knitting all the time.
Yeah, because her corpse in that one at the end is like has these kind of puffy cheeks, and it looks like they added teeth to make it slightly different. But and I think the same with special effects guy. So I mean that makes sense that they would just especially if it was done cheaply. That so I was like looking, I was like, oh, that's from the last car. I knew it right away. I was like, oh, that's the. So yeah. I mean, it's a twist. The curse kills him. I mean,
basically, yeah. The Beatles.
Beatles start kind of like they're all over his face and they come out of his mouth. It looks like it's the actual actor too, because you can see them in the mouth, kind of moving around and slightly come out. And I was like, ooh. I don't think they definitely didn't have the effects budget to make a accurate dummy head. So I know what they do. They sort of put like a block in your mouth, so the crawly are just like in there, and they can't go into your throat
or anything. Ugh.
Yeah.
I couldn't do. Kudos to that actor for doing that because I wouldn't want to do it. I don't mind beetles if a beetle just gets on my hand or something, I'm not gonna mind it, but I don't want them in my mouth. I'm not like Kane Hodder who allowed him to put worms and stuff in his mouth when he.
I mean, it was creepy though. Whenever when you first see like just one beetle just sort of like scurries out, it's pretty effective, especially if you don't like bugs.
And it's sort of although not as graphic, but it was reminiscent to me of they're creeping up on you episode from Creep Show. Only at the end of that, they just like basically just explode.
Well, they had more money.
And they had Tom Savini in.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that Tom Savini hadn't done some special effects for Tales from the Darkside as well and directed some, but
yeah,
they probably couldn't afford Tom Savini style special effects at this point.
Also the ones he directed and did the effects. So I mean,
yeah,
he was using his own. I'm sure that's besides him knowing Romero and Rubenstein and everybody. I'm sure there's like, oh yeah, we can save money by having the special effects guy also direct. I mean,
Yeah, get in here, Tom Savini. So yeah, not a real. I guess not a real twist, as TJ said, but just kind of a come up and say EC Comics type of deal. You play with fire, you get burned, type of thing. And in this case, you play with beetles, they'll end up in having in your body, type of thing. So, is there anything else you want to say about that episode, TJ, before we move on to the next one?
No, not really. Okay. Well, there's the British detective guy who's sort of like very with the bowler hat and whatever. And,
exactly.
And there's a lot of this season has a lot of comedic parts, even if maybe not the episodes aren't that really Comedy Central. I mean, Comedy Central. That channel. Also, this seems very British. Like I said, with the it's got the constable with the constable hat on and the like I said, the British guy, and so it's like it gives me that feeling like one of those like Dr. Phibes gives me that Dr. Phibes.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The way the camera is and everything like that. But
Hey,
yeah,
71. I see you're back in here. It's good to see you back. Um, so the
oh,
next,
oh, sorry, one more thing. There's the cool
oh,
video where he's shaving and then you see all the needles all over his face. That's pretty like, yeah,
yeah, that was a pretty cool effect, I think, and kind
yeah,
of, especially if you don't like bugs, like TJ says. Um,
yeah.
so the next episode is
Ah.
Mary Mary, which I like this one because you get the feeling that the main lady, Mary, uh,
Lois Childs, who's in Creepshow 2 in the third segment.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's in the Hitchhiker. She's the Mrs. Mrs. Lansing. It's going to cost
Mrs. Lansing,
$500 million.
the
Car,
one,
Mrs. Lansing.
the one that was paying this gigolo guy, I guess, for all her
Yeah.
orgasms. I'm
She's in
sorry,
that movie Coma. She's been, but yeah, that's who that is.
I did not realize that was the same lady. But now that you said it, I'm kind of flashing back to that episode now. But I think one of the reasons why I like this episode, besides the ending, which we're gonna talk about
Right.
here in a little bit, is the fact that I, I know the feeling of, because you would never tell it now the way I blab and get on these streams and do all this stuff. But at one point in time in my life, I was a very extremely painfully shy person who stumbled over their words when they were trying to talk to people. I couldn't have even got on these streams and got out two sentences without just, making a complete mess of things. Of course, people might still think I make a mess of things, but anyway, I think I'm better than I used to be.
By the way, I just only got it's not Lois Childs.
Oh, it's not. I
No,
thought.
she looks so much like her. I forgot. It's she's from Margaret Whitten from she's in The Secret of My Success. She plays like the boss's wife who's trying to hit on Michael J. Fox during the movie, and
Yeah,
she's in the Major League. Have you seen the Major League movies
yeah,
with um, Charlie Sheen,
yeah.
where she's another like she owns. She's always playing like a somebody rich, rich crazy, horned up character. But this one, I'm sorry. Why did I think she was Lois? She looks like her. I'm sorry. She looks like.
She does look like her because I
Edit that out. Edit that.
but I think
Anyway, yes.
I feel close to that type of character because she seems like she is really painfully shy, awkward, just doesn't, unless, and we're going to get to this in more detail. I'm going to hand it over to TJ here in a second. She's dealing with mannequins that she dresses up and puts makeup on, paints their nails, and all of that. And keep in mind, guys, this was in the days of video dating as well. I'm glad I never had to do that. Video dating just doesn't seem, technically I met Steve through the internet before I ever met him in person, and now we're married. So I guess that's some form of like an extension of video dating when people meet somebody online. Like my cousin met her husband now through a game she was playing through EverQuest. I believe she's freaking addicted to that game, but I don't like her husband now, but that's another story for another day. I think he's a jerk. She's been married 3 times. She had one husband was very abusive, and she got away from him. And then sorry guys for getting off on a tangent. I'll make this quick. And then her second husband, Mark, was I thought of him like a brother. I loved him, and unfortunately, he passed away from cancer. at a very young age. And now her husband she's got now, eh,
Ah,
him off the list too. But Mark was the only one I liked out of the three. So anyway, um, I'm gonna turn this back over to TJ to talk a little bit more about Mary Mary.
so Mary, who is not Lois Childs, is yeah, like you said, she's a loner. She's a photographer. She comes back from a day of shooting hot fashion models, probably. I was thinking of several movies watching this. Like, I was thinking of Maniac. I was thinking of Tourist Trap. I was thinking of Miss Medusa, one of the other episodes. There's a lot of creepy mannequin stuff. There's a couple of short movies like from the 70s and 80s. There's like, with just talking mannequin, and it's just
wasn't there an original Twilight Zone episode where this girl, she thought she was a real girl, but she was a mannequin, and something
spoiler to that episode. Anne Francis. A forbidden flame.
Don't they? I mean, in that episode, doesn't she think that she's a real woman or a real girl?
Yeah, it's called the After Hours.
After Hours.
Yeah, she goes to this department store, and we're talking about a different show now. She goes to the department store and she's returning something, and she faints, and they keep her overnight, and everybody leaves, and she's left alone, and then she starts hearing voices and seeing things, and then the twist is she's a mannequin, and they get to leave. They all get a week off. All the mannequins get a week to be human in the world, and she just went over her due date. Kind of.
But I think that's kind of creepy too, in and of itself. To not realize that you're a mannequin, and eventually you're going to have to go back to being the mannequin in the store again.
Yeah. So so she's very lonely. So you talk about video dating. She sets up mannequins, and she basically she catfishes. She's a catfisher. That's what she is basically. She'll send these tapes to people. She won't go through with the meeting. She'll like just see who responds, and then maybe she'll do another one. And first of all, how do you not? If you get someone sends you a video with just a voiceover, and you're just it's a still image or whatever, a still video, even because she sets them up, and it looks like, well, in the realm of this story, it looks like they're set up that it looks real.
Right.
So that's a real person.
But I don't know, maybe because I already knew they were mannequins, I was like, how can these guys not tell that this is a setup, that this is a mannequin?
Guys who want, I'm not speaking for all men, but guys who want girls in whatever reason are stupid when it comes to girls.
Evidently.
Well, look at Samira. Well, I don't know how many people saw Scream 6. Never mind. I won't say anything about that. Maybe people watching this haven't seen that movie yet. So if you haven't seen it, go see the. I watched. Now to get off on a tangent, I watched a good movie and a terrible movie. The first movie I watched was Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Which, have you seen that?
Not yet.
It's not good.
Is it terrible?
It's gory. This is a good gore, I guess. The story, the characters, something happened at the beginning, and I said, if something ends up happening later on connected to this, I'm going to be very upset. And it happened, and I was like, I knew it, and it pissed me off. And then I watched Cocaine Bear, which was awesome. It was so much better.
Bear was awesome. I'm definitely going to, I think Steve has, don't anybody tell anybody. I think Steve has downloaded a copy of it. It's probably a cam or something.
Cocaine Bear was great. It's like, first I was like, all right, because I'm usually good at like, I can sit down and watch something and just pay attention to it and not like be like go off and think of other stuff or like watching except for like the Psycho remake. I can watch a remake and kind of just like watch it for what it is and not compare it to the movie. Afterwards I will. Right. But watching it, I can just sort of have tunnel vision and just watch what's going on. So because I didn't like Blood and Honey, you could say I like Cocaine Bear because that one was so bad, but Cocaine Bear is really good. and it was good with the comedy horror, which that's always a rough thing. And Elizabeth Banks hasn't done a lot of movies, so that's pretty good that it worked out for her. But I think the reviews have been pretty good for that.
Blissful says TJ had a movie theme going on, and Darren says I've got that Winnie the Pooh downloaded, but I'm not expecting much.
Watch it with a group of people. If you watch it alone, you're going to be so upset that you watched it by yourself. I watched it with 3 other people, and all of us didn't like it. So it was.
Oh wow!
We all have sort of different tastes, so it was a perfect that we all came to the conclusion that it was not good. But the director wants to do other public domain fairy tale type of things. Like he wants to do a Bambi horror movie, and he wants to do 2 different Peter Pan type horror movies.
I don't know.
Then he wants to take stuff that's like already like he wants to do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, and I'm like,
At this point?
you're not gonna you're not gonna be able to get that because that's a property you have to pay for or whatever. But yeah, right. with the Blood and Honey thing, it's just like it was so, and it's the two. They're almost static masks. They do like the Pooh has some animatronics, but it's not expressive. Like his mouth moves a little bit, and his eye moves a little bit.
Texas said he says Cocaine Bear was absolutely brilliant. I can confirm.
It's great, yeah.
And Blissful says, did the 100 Acre Wood get all yucky?
In the movie? Or in general?
I guess in the movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's supposed to be. Well, the premise is Christopher Robin has left them alone, and then they have to sort of fend for themselves.
So did they go rogue or something?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it. You have to watch. I mean, you don't have to watch it. I mean, I'm not recommending it. Like I said, if you're gonna watch, it's like one of those group movies you can like all hate it together. Mm-hmm. But then I don't want to just make an assumption that old Curly Jaws will love it, but
but you're
Old Curly Jaws the sequel or whatever his new name is. I put it trivia. Old Curly Jaws the sequel. That I'm giving you that one. If you'll hear this, that's a free one. You get to have that. Old Curly Jaws the sequel.
So I got to put this up here. Dirk says top 5 mannequin movies: Maniac, Tourist Trap, Spasmo. I didn't think of Mannequin and Mannequin 2.
Mannequin 2.
Oh, I'm an Eeyore fan too, Blissful.
Oh, do you know? Oh, she knows what happens to Eeyore.
I was gonna say if something bad happens to Eeyore, I don't know if I want to.
I have a. You can't see it because it's not in the camera, but I have an Eeyore up there somewhere. Eeyore's my favorite because Eeyore's like I all the depressing characters I go to. I like Eeyore. I like Wimbley. I like Boober the Fraggle. He's my favorite because he's very down and.
Oh gosh, I haven't thought of like Fraggle.
One, like some of the gore was okay. If the gore was in a different movie, I don't know. I give it a 2 for the gore.
Oh wow, it's not even good in the gore department, man. This movie sounds like it's sorely lacking.
I mean, there must people must like it. I don't know.
And my neighbor is huge into Winnie the Pooh. She loves Winnie the Pooh, so I don't think she's going to want to watch this.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Okay, back to Mary Mary. Right, Mary, how does your garden grow? There we go. So yeah, it's very creepy because she has mannequin hands at one point on a bureau, just kind of like it looks with painted nail polish, and she has mannequins in the corner and everything.
I'm just putting some of these things up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Darren, don't watch it alone.
Right.
Unless you drink. Maybe you should drink and then watch.
Oh, gosh.
Actually, that might work. That's why I would think Old Curly Jaws would like it because, gummy bear. Anyway, that's the only one you can think of as Mannequin 2 on the move. With Christy Swanson and William Ragsdale, I think, is in that.
Is William Ragsdale in that one?
Oh, and Weekend at Bernie's dude. What's his name?
Andrew McCarthy.
No, Bernie. Yeah. What the hell's his name? From Tammy and the T-Rex, his other big movie.
Yes. Oh,
what the hell's his name?
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Anybody in the comments want to help us? I can just look it up. I mean, Weekend at Bernie.
Yeah, because he's on Friday the 13th, Part 7.
Oh yeah, he's the dipshit
as the dickhead doctor. Yeah.
Who effed up Tina and got her mother killed. Yeah, Terry Kaiser. That's who that is.
Terry Kaiser. Yes, sir. I loved Weekend at Bernie's, but Andrew McCarthy was also on Weekend at Bernie's too. He was one of the guys that had to work in the. They figured out what was going on, and somebody was stealing money, but it turned out to be Bernie. He was going to have them killed.
By the way, Dirk, I think that might be the only 5 mannequin movies. Actually, did he put down Maniac? Because that's yeah. So I mean, yeah, I don't think they're on a lot of mannequin. Yeah, I couldn't even think of another horror. Unless you count the demonic toys, but they're not mannequins.
Tourist Trap is really creepy too. The way the mannequins open their mouths, and
I would hate for them to remake that, but I would think it would be cool to do a remake. But then you'd have to do one of those. They'd either set it in the same time period, or you do one of those. We're gonna put all our cell phones in the bag, and they're gonna get run over by a car, or the router doesn't work. I think some movie was like the router doesn't work, and I'm like, you can still get reception even with the router broken. I don't know. Anyway, Mary, very creepy. So she does these tapes, and she sets up the mannequins, and she pretends that she's the women, and she has different ones. She has one main one that she's dressing up. So like I said, she's a catfishing. But she's like a sweet character, and this was the 80s, so maybe you could forgive it, because how many... I'm not forgiving catfishing. That's not what I'm
but she had an innocence about her that made it almost impossible for you to dislike her.
And this was the 80s, before you had like that much... you can't get in touch with people like you could back then. I mean, there weren't, internet stuff, and, you weren't sending people false photos and whatever. And, I mean, she was doing that, but I'm trying to, whatever. It's
guys pretending they're hot women and stuff like that. That's just twisted.
Yeah, let's not get into that. So, and this was written and directed by women. So, I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, so Mary, she's like, all right, we're going to send this tape out and see what the guy says back. Meanwhile, there's another thing. She has a neighbor who has been spying on her through her window. So so he's a stalker, basically.
I didn't like to call him that, though. He's sweet.
He's a sweet stalker. He's a sweet stalker. He just wants a date with her. He's been seeing her through the window, and she's doing this stuff with a wide open window. And I'm going to guess it's like a New York type of situation. So people look in the windows all the time. I mean,
yeah.
There were not that everybody watched Friends, but there were episodes of Friends where they're looking in windows from across the walkway and stuff in the hall, and all that stuff, and and that was in the 90s or 2000s. Yeah. So I mean, but anyway, so this guy is like, he knows it's not the mannequins. Like, he's seen her doing it. He's like, oh, I've seen you set up and do photography and video stuff, and he's like, he wants to get her on a date. And like, so he's not coming over not at this point. He's not coming over and like knocking on the door. But he's trying to like say, hey, I think you're an interesting person, and I'd like to get to know you. So she decides, hey, I'm gonna record him a video message, just kind of so she doesn't, because she's nervous and she feels weird meeting people and stuff like that. And, like, she goes out to be a photographer, but that's not really interacting with people socially. I mean, she's she's probably setting up her equipment, and I'm just making up ideas or whatever. But so she probably doesn't talk to the models except for stand here and stand there or whatever. So she's contemplating meeting this guy. Actually, I have to look up his name because I forget what his name is.
David, I think.
David. Oh, there we go. His name is David. Yeah, so he's trying to get her. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to send you some tickets," and so she's trying to record the message, and she just can't. She just can't get herself to say the words, and she can do it fine when she's speaking for the. Yeah, she can do it when she's speaking for the mannequins, but for herself, she can't, and that's a pretty. And there's that's another thing too. They could have had her be agoraphobic and not leave the house. And that would have been another level. But since she goes out to do her job as a photographer, that doesn't count. That would have added another. But that might have been too tragic. So anyway, yeah. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna come over. We're gonna pick you up. We're gonna go see the baseball game. There's a point where she's getting excited, and she's like, she has like some kind of like. Maybe it was like a stick to set up lighting, a light, pole or whatever. And she's like, "All right, batter, let's swing on this." And it's just like she's getting into it. And like, so you're really endeared to this character, I think. Mm-hmm. Unless you're just totally jaded and a jerk, and maybe you probably don't like it. Yes. If you're a woman hater, you probably won't. You won't feel the same way about this. But anyway, so yeah, and then he's like, "All right, I'm going to come over and take you out, and I'll stop there because it gets into." What happens at the end of the episode.
So after me and TJ have said all these very nice things about the main character of Mary in this, I almost hate to bring this up, but I'm going to. But I want to see what TJ thinks about what I'm going to say here, because I feel like there's a point in the episode where she's interacting a little bit too much with the mannequins. Where it's like she can hear them talking to her.
She starts talking in the mannequin voice for the mannequin.
Yeah.
The camera goes to her. At first, she just hears a voice.
Yeah.
And it's her voice, but it's her voice as the mannequin character. But she's like Schneier or some kind of like weird exotic name she makes up for these. For the one mannequin that
is Monique, isn't it?
That's probably it. You're right. It is Monique. Okay.
And
but then the camera she's talking to the Monique character, but then she's doing it like she's like, "Oh, he seems like a nice guy, and I'd like to go with him. He wouldn't want you, Mary. You're an unattractive, non-interesting person. What would he want to do with someone like you?" So she's schizophrenic now. So
yeah, that's the point I was going to bring up. That I feel like
she's so lonely. She's schizophrenic is basically what happened.
There's a hint of mental illness in there.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more sad. That the woman has spent this much time alone, and I don't know if on her job, because we never find out that. If when she goes to her job, if she interacts with anybody, or does she just go there and take the pictures and come home?
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
Is she a loner at work, or, because it seems as if she is. It seems like, because some people, when they get off from work, especially if they get off on a Friday, and I think when this episode starts, it's a Friday.
It's Friday for the weekend.
It's getting ready to be the weekend. And a lot of people will go out with friends, or they'll do something. But what does Mary do? She comes back to her apartment and plays with mannequins, and I hate to put it that way, but, and she doesn't even have a real dog as a pet. She has a dog, and she brings him a toy. And she brings him a food dish with Ace on there. And it's like, what a sad and lonely life to live.
You can't even have a dog.
Pet, not a real pet anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very, it's a creepy episode, but a very sad episode too.
Yeah.
But I liked it, and so I'm gonna punt it back over to TJ to talk about the ending, the stinger or twist, whatever you want to call it.
So she's basically she's looking in the mirror crying. It cuts to a little later. David comes to get her. He comes in and is like, "Sorry, I'm coming in your house." And that's another thing. It's kind of funny thinking back of it because it's like, I'm just walking into your house. I'm basically a stranger, and I'm coming through your open door.
If you did that now, you'd probably get shot in the face.
Yeah, I mean, you should lock the door anyway. So yeah, and so he comes over and is like, "Mary, why are you?" He's kind of looking forward. He's walking through, and he sees her. She's kind of sitting down, and he grabs her by the shoulder and turns her around, and she's like in a swivel chair. Yeah, in a swivel chair, and it's a mannequin. It's her as a mannequin. She's become a mannequin, and Monique's sort of in the corner, kind of looking down or looking in her area, and so she's in the chair, and then, Monique's like, and he's like,
David kind of freaks out or something, like he's seen something obscene or something. He just kind of backs out of there.
Yeah, and she's just, and that's the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Or he bumps into Monique, and then he sees,
right.
And then he focuses on Mary again, and he's like, yeah, and she's a mannequin, and it's like, yeah. So I mean, yeah, if you hang out with mannequins too much, you'll become a mannequin.
You'll become one.
Mr. Slauson!
Exactly. Oh man. I'm just imagining those mannequins on Tourist Trap now going, oh.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving right along to the next episode, which is
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Mary.
Oh, Mary. The spirit photographer. And
yes,
I like this one. And going back and rewatching it, I saw again why I like this episode, and it sort of reminds me a little bit of "I'll Give You a Million." Remember way back when we talked about that episode?
Yep.
Something about this one kind of reminds me of that, and also reminds me of, what was it? Florence Bravo was.
Yeah, that's the
one with Laurie
Cargill. Yeah, she's the ghost of the woman who hates men.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let TJ start talking about the spirit photographer, and then I'll kind of just fill in a little bit before we give the reveal.
So Algernon is a older man. He's got this camera that can take photos of ghosts, because people have been trying to take photos of ghosts, but they haven't been able to because they'll disappear. And he's discovered that if you use a regular camera, it'll sort of suck the life force out of the ghosts, and the ghosts will sort of dissipate and disappear. So he has a machine set up. So he's like a scientist, and he's made a machine so he can actually photograph these ghosts. And he has a friend Harry, who's like, tell him to be careful. Like, first of all, he doesn't really believe it. Like, he's sort of just supporting his friend, but he's like, yeah, ghosts aren't real. And you're like, he's very adamant that ghosts aren't real. That's his character. So it's this juxtaposition between the two of them, where it's like someone believes in ghosts and wants to try to take photos, and the other one just is like just a non-believer.
Right.
So his Algernon's apartment or house is supposedly haunted by this spirit, which is that's why he's there, is to try to get this specific spirit. Um, and eventually we do see her. It's old. She's probably from like 1900s. Definitely cameras were around when she was alive, or maybe even movies at some point, because her ghost is very, because up until that point it's a dramatic story. It's not funny, but when we see the ghost, she's sort of posing because she knows there's a camera, and her ghost is very woo, very like expressive, woo, and she's like woo, and she's spinning around, and she notices the camera, and she's like she's very posing for the camera. She's and so and he's like, I'm going to capture your photo, basically, and she's very into it, but we find out that she's not a nice spirit. She's she wants his soul, basically. She's another one. She's sort of, Florence Bravo. She's very, I don't know if she's anti-men, but she's definitely has no problem killing people. Because I think no, maybe there isn't. Because now that you said Florence Bravo, I'm not sure. Was this woman ghost a murderer, or was it just she was just a ghost and we don't know anything about her?
I thought there was something to do with murder in there, because at one point, the guy with the camera, the special camera, he asked her. He says something like, I don't know if he said Jack or what, was he right? And she gets really kind of upset when he says that.
Okay.
Is that true, what this other guy said? And
so maybe that is it. Also, I forgot to mention that while he's trying to capture the ghost's photo, this machine is taking his kind of essence. He's looking very tired and gaunt and pale, and his friend's like, look at you, you're wasting away, kinda. And so the machine doesn't take away from spirit's energy, but it takes away from the living.
Yeah.
Which you can probably see where the twist is coming just from that comment. But yeah, and so he finally gets the photo of the ghost, and and then we find out that she's a bitch. Anyway. So so that's pre-spoiler information.
I would just like to say again that I like this episode, and I like it more and more the more times I watch it. I believe this was another one that the first couple of times I watched it, I'm like, and then it kind of grew on me, and then rewatching it recently, I was like, yeah, this is actually a good Tales from the Darkside episode. Now, I know a lot of people will say that the longer the Tales from the Darkside went on, I think CK said this too, that there were less and less good episodes. But actually, this being the final season, I still think there's a decent number of good episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some not so hot episodes too, which we're going to talk about before we're done with this series. And one of them we're going to be talking about tonight, because I'm just looking at the title of it. But I
can't wait to see which one you didn't like.
Yeah.
Well, this one I definitely. Well, I did like it, actually. Never mind. Yeah. Okay. I won't spoil it for when we get to it, but yeah.
So I like anything to do with ghosts, spirits, stuff like that, because I'm a believer in that kind of stuff. People can laugh if they want, but I've had experiences both, just being in the house. Like when I was living with my parents, there were experiences that I can't explain. For instance, me getting woke up out of a dead sleep by hearing a woman say my name, and I thought it was my mom. And you know how it feels when you come out of like a dead sleep and hear something?
Yeah.
And so I asked my mom the next day, I was like, "Mom, did you call out my name in the middle of the night?" She's like, "No, Dana, I didn't." And it clearly, it sounded a lot like my mom.
Yeah.
Um, and there were other things. My grandparents, my dad's parents, um, lived on a piece of property where two houses burned.
Uh-huh.
One when my dad was a kid, and one after my papa had passed away and my gran had moved out of the house, and another family had moved into it and had done some renovations on the inside. Thankfully, I don't think they were living in the house at that point in time, but it just burnt right to the ground, just like the house my dad uh, pretty much grew up in that
Yeah.
burned. And so I was talking to Patty Starr, who's a big ghost hunter person in Kentucky. And I was talking to her and her husband because when I was working for the library system back home, uh, they came and did a ghost hunting program for the library in October one year. But anyway, I was talking to them about it, and I was telling them what had happened, and they said that it definitely sounded like there was some kind of activity going on there, um, because of what had, you know, two houses burning down in the same spot. I had been told that there was either a Civil War burial ground somewhere on the property or an Indian burial ground somewhere
Yeah.
on the property. And you know what happens if you disturb Indian burial grounds? Bad things happen. So,
So
and
with the TV and a little girl, you'll be in trouble.
yeah, exactly. And, I've gotten some EVP recordings here at this house, Stephen I's house. This house has been here quite a long time. It's an old house. And, you know, like I said, people can laugh at me if they want to. I don't mind. And I've seen a couple of things at Waverly Hills when I went to Waverly Hills, the old TB hospital here in Louisville that's supposed to be very, very haunted. And both times I went, I saw things. Well, actually, the first time I went, the ghost showed up in my pictures.
Really?
I did not see this person until I had my pictures blown up on the computer and I was just going through them.
Huh?
And I said, wait a second. So there was a shot of our guide.
You have me looking around the room now.
Yeah, sorry, TJ. There's a shot of our guide that was taking us on the tour through Waverly Hills, and she was talking, and I had just snapped a picture of the room. And so when I was going back looking at these pictures, behind the guide and behind a couple of people that were in our group, there
Yeah.
was another woman. And I call for Steve. I said, "Come here and look at this, Steve." Of course, he claims he doesn't believe in this stuff. And I says, "Let me know, was that girl or woman in our group?" And he's like, "I don't remember her name." He said, "That's freaking me out." And he went back in the living room. He wouldn't even stay back here.
Mhm.
And so upon closer inspection, it looked like she had a different hairstyle. I even went back and looked at hairstyles from the 20s, which was when this TB hospital was like really big. Her hair matched the women's hairstyles from the 20s.
Yeah.
And it appeared that she had a hat that maybe she was holding with a ribbon on it. Again, I went back and looked at hats that women wore from that time period, and it looked like those. Now, that was kind of freaky, but interesting too. And then the second time I went, I stayed half the night, and me and my neighbors went. And when we were in the what they call the death tunnel, where they used to take the people that had passed away from TB. They would take them through this chute or death tunnel, as people call it, to prevent the other sick patients from seeing them rolling out dead bodies. You know, they were afraid it would depress them. Go figure, you know, that would depress them. But anyway, so I saw an apparition. I have video of the apparition in the death tunnel of a woman with a long dress on.
Wow.
And as we were going back up the death tunnel, she just kept moving backwards like she was floating. And then she just disappeared all of a sudden. And I was talking to her, you know, I wanted her to stay around and be able to film her more. But when we got to the end, we got back up to the beginning where we started, she just kind of dissipated or disappeared. But anyway, that's my ghost stories to chill your bones for the night. But I think that's probably one reason why I like these ghostly stories, just because that kind of, the whole thing tickles my fancy. I've got a ghost hunting kit. Steve still laughs at me for having my ghost hunting kit with my EVP recorders, my what are they called? EKG, are they called EKG meters, where you can, it has a dial that goes across it, and when there's some kind of supernatural activity, it will go way off the scale or whatever. But anyway, I've got one of those meters. I've got my recorders and all that. And Steve says sometimes, well, have you had your ghost hunting kit out playing with it lately? You spent all that money on it. And I said, well, I might go back to Waverly Hills. I might want to, you know, take it back with me again. But anyway, yeah, I really did like this episode, and I liked the character in it. I thought the friend, though, TJ, did you think his friend seemed like a dick sometimes? I mean, sometimes he would seem like he was worried about him, and other times he'd be like, you know, screw you. I'm not going to stand around and listen to you talk about spirits and ghosts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just he doesn't believe, you know, especially, well, when you believe in real life and then you watch somebody who doesn't believe, I mean, I don't think he was terrible, but yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean,
yeah, just a little bit at certain points in times. So, because I talked a lot about personal things with ghosts and stuff, I'm going to turn it back over to TJ so he can let you know the twist of this one.
I mean, I've always wanted to see ghosts. I hate when I move into a new, well, not that I do it all the time, but when I moved into my new house, I was like, is it haunted? It'd be great if it was, but my place at the time was only 10 years old, so, and I think it had one owner, so if there are any ghosts, we actually know what happened, who they came from, who killed them. Yeah, I never got lucky enough to see them, but I live in New England, and there's a lot of areas, I'm sure, if I go to them. I would love to go, until I saw how much the prices are, I would love to go into the Conjuring house, but
oh, that would be awesome.
But yeah, and I read how much the prices were. It's like, what? Unless I'm seeing a ghost, I ain't spending $500 a night or whatever the hell.
Holy crap!
It was, yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, I mean, yeah. So after he finally gets the photo, he goes to sleep basically. And he wakes up in his robe and he's like, oh, I'll refresh, because he had a great sleep. And he's like, oh, that was one of the best sleeps I've ever had. And then he starts seeing an image of his friend who's in this like beekeeper outfit, kind of looks like, with the, well, you know, one of those it looks like a radiation suit basically.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I did it. I finally took a photo of a ghost, and he's like, yes. He's like, you did it. I didn't believe it, but it's amazing that you did this. But hey, the machine you were using, it killed you. So that's basically what happened. The machine took all his energy from him, and he died, and now he's a ghost. And the the thing about moving on that was set up earlier with the ghost and the female ghost that it's like she can move on now or whatever and so his thing is like, oh, now that he got the photo, he can move on. And then he kind of is like he's very like calm and serene about it, and very happy. And he's like, and his friend's like, you did it, and you'll be known forever now for you're the first person to ever actually photograph a ghost. And he's wearing the radiation suit because of the machine, and then the guy just it's like, great, and I'll be seeing you. He doesn't say it's spooky, but he's like, well, I'll be seeing you sometime soon, or I'll be seeing you in the future or whatever. And he kind of fades away, and that's the end of the episode.
Yep, and definitely one I want to go back. I mean, not right away and revisit, but I want to
Not to scream and go right and watch
it. So that brings us to the next episode, which has none other than Deborah Harry or Debbie Harry. You music people will be interested in this one. Texas,
yeah. I was gonna
say. 71, probably y'all all be interested in the fact that good old Debbie Harry is in the episode The Moth. So
one way or the other, I knew she would be around somewhere.
So I'll let TJ start talking about The Moth.
Yeah, so Deborah Harry, who's also in the Twilight Zone, Tales from the Darkside, the movie. She's in the wraparound segment. I guess there's really no title for the wraparound segment, but she's the witch who's trying to cook the little Lawrence brother. I think he's the one that doesn't act anymore because he didn't want to be part of the brother group.
Because I'm out of here. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, Curly Jaws is in the.
Yep, he's
in the house. So Debbie Harry comes home one night. Her mother's been worried about her. She's telling about how the local people are calling her a witch, and she's like, "Well, Mom, guess what? I'm a witch." That's really creepy. It's a creepy episode. It's like I guess, are they in a bayou or something like that? Is it like one of those types of situations?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because they're slightly southern-ish. Like Debbie Harry doesn't have an accent because she's Debbie Harry. She doesn't have an accent.
Exactly. She don't have to have an accent.
Yeah, her mother's not necessarily like, they're not like country, but they're southern-esque, let's say. It's not like what's her face in American Horror Story, where she was like the bayou. What the hell's her name?
Trying to remember now. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the one who was obsessed with Stevie Nicks. What's her character? What's the actor's name? Let me just be in it.
You know what else Deborah Harry was in? Wow.
Videodrome.
Yeah, that and what else? What else was she in?
That's from the movie. No. What else was she in?
Body Bags. She was in the.
Oh, that's right. She's like the nurse or whatever it is. Yeah. The weird nurse, right? Yeah.
The one that kind of hits on Stacy Keach in that episode.
I mentioned bears. I'm just reading the chat now.
Oh.
I like the actress too. I can't remember what the hell her name is. Well, Curly, you're not helping out then. I'll just write the carrot. Oh, Lily Rabb. That's who it is.
Oh, okay.
Jesus.
We're getting old, TJ. That's.
Yeah, I can't remember. I used to be able to remember names off the top of my head. Now, like, I have to like for a while there were two names I just couldn't remember. They just were not in my head, and I finally it was Parker Posey, and I just forgot again. Never mind. All right.
Speaking of Parker Posey, Steve's getting Party Girl in soon.
Oh, that's a good movie. I like that. Is that on 4K?
I don't know if it's 4K or just Blu-ray.
Yeah. And Aubrey Plaza, she's the second one. I keep forgetting those two names, but yeah, that was a good movie. They did a TV series with Ben Stiller's wife, Christine Taylor. She did like the TV version, which it wasn't that great. Anyway, yeah. So Debbie Harry, Sybil is a witch, and she's like talking about the local, like the local. She's having sex with one of the local guys, and the woman's like, she's a witch, and that's why he's with her, and and the mother's, she's very religious, but she's like, you can't do all these evil things, and it's not right, and she's very self-righteous isn't the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. And I can start reading the chat now. Okay. So Sybil goes out and comes back again, and she's been stabbed by the woman who was accusing her of taking her man. And it's like, I didn't take him because I'm a witch. I'm just taking him because, I'm a slut. That's right. And anyway, so she's basically dying, and she tells her mother, because she has these she has like a spell book, and she's very. I'm downplaying how much of a witch she actually is in the episode, but there's a lot of stuff happening in the episode. I'm just trying to get through. Anyway, so she comes home and she's like, all right, Mama, I'm going to die, and I'm going to tell you when I'm going to die, and when I do, you have to cover my mouth, tie my mouth with a cloth, and then get a jar, and then put it up to my mouth, and whatever comes out of my mouth, you save it, and then I'm going to come back for it. And Sybil ends up dying, and this moth basically comes out of her mouth, and the mother puts it in a jar, and when she's gonna Sybil's gonna come back and claim it, and then she's gonna live again. Well, the mother does not want that to happen, so she uses her daughter's own spell book to find a spell to stop all this from happening, and she puts branches all over Sybil's body to pretend like she's in the ground, and she puts like sand on the ground, so if she walks, she'll feel the sand. So she sets up all these things, and then when Sybil sort of wakes up, because she's not going to give her the moth. She doesn't want her to come back, and she's like, Mama, and she's yelling for her mother, and she's like. That can't be you, Sybil. Sybil's dead. And she's talking to her like not as Sybil. She's talking to her like it's not the third person because she's talking about someone. You know what I'm saying? So she's like, my Sybil's dead. She can't come back. You're not my Sybil. You can't be because she's dead. And she's like, I smell the pine wood. I smell the pines of the trees outside. And she's like, no, honey, no. So yeah, there are some that she has. All right, she does have sort of a southern accent. And as I'm talking in the accent, I'm like, oh, she does have an accent. So she's like, no, that's the pine wood of the box you're buried in, honey. And then she gets up and she's like, she's walking on the dirt, and she's like, I feel the sand. Oh, that's the dirt of your of the graveyard. That's what the dirt is, and you can't come out until you count the sands and tell me how many sands of dirt, sands of, whatever are on the ground. So Sybil starts counting them. 1, 2. Meanwhile, it's all dark and very spooky, and it's very atmospheric, and I think that really works in this movie. It's all dark because it's all at one night, more or less. And the mother's very good at they're both very good at what they're doing. Debbie Harry's really good at the creepy witch, and her mother's just like, she's going against her faith and everything to stop her daughter because she shouldn't be using this black magic at all, but this is the only way she can stop her daughter from coming back. And like I said, Sybil's counting the grains of sand, and she's like, you can't come out until you count all the grains of sand. And then, some other stuff happens, and I'll stop there and let you take over.
First of all, I love it because Debbie Harry's in this episode, because, I mean, no matter what you might think about her,
I'm always touched by her presence, Dana.
I think she does a good job, and I mean, I thought she was great in Videodrome. I'm glad that TJ brought that up again because I had some kind of memory lapse.
That should be on 4K. I'm surprised that hasn't been on 4K.
Yeah, that does need to be on 4K. That's a wild movie, I tell you.
I have the Criterion, and I'm like, that's already like got a. I don't know if that was a 4K scan or not.
I've got the Criterion too. I'd have to look.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm done.
Oh, that's okay. But I think she does a really good job as the Sybil character. I think the mother. Do you know the actress that played the mother, TJ?
Yeah. Jane Manning. I don't think she really did much.
But she's excellent in this. I think her and Debbie Harry really play off of each other really well. You could almost believe that they were mother and daughter in the short time, this 21, 22 minutes that this episode was on.
And they do love each other. That they seen it in the episode that, it's not just, she's the evil one and the mother's just like trying to,
right.
she really loves her daughter and probably didn't want her to die at all, but definitely doesn't want to put up with the witchcraft situation and have her, hurting other people and whatnot. And she also, and Debbie Harry's character Sybil really loves her mother too, but she's not like, she's a simple girl who's not like trying to use her powers to take over the world, but that could lead to that. Who knows? But anyway,
she just wants to get a little action, I think, and
wants to get a little swamp nookie is what she.
And she gets a thrill, I guess, out of taking other girls' boyfriends, and which some girls or women do that in real life. They get a thrill out of seeing how many boyfriends they can steal. And they're not witches. They just like to do that. So you just get the added bonus of the character of Sybil being a witch in this one and using actual black magic to get what she wants. But the story is very atmospheric, as TJ said. It's very dark and moody, a type of atmosphere, and basically all the action takes place in their little house. I mean, once I don't think you get outside of the house, do you? In any part of the episode, Sybil just comes in and she's been injured by, the girlfriend of the guy she was messing around with.
Yeah, it's just like the one location.
Yeah. And I think that is great too, because they didn't have to go to any other locations. All the action takes place. This one area is just tight and well acted. I think they picked the right actresses for these parts. So this is one of my favorite episodes of the series. I would put that up there pretty high. Maybe not right at the top of my list, but pretty far up there.
When you say you didn't like an episode, I was like, it better not be this one because I have to fight you.
No, this is I've always liked this one because I couldn't see, unless you're super picky, hating this episode. So I'm going to turn it back over to TJ to reveal the little stinger twist.
Yeah, so 1 second here. What was I doing? So so Sybil's mother, the moth gets out, and she goes to grab the moth, and it sort of explodes, and Sybil also dies for good. And the mother that's another thing. The mother comes out kind of creepy, and she starts smiling a little like sinister. She's looking at Sybil's dead body, and she's slowly walking to her mother, and she starts talking to her Sybil, but it's not her mother talking to Sybil. It's Sybil talking to Sybil. So Sybil has come back, and because the mother had touched the moth, which is the soul, Sybil's soul goes into the mother. And yeah, and the mother, I guess it doesn't really show it specifically, but it looks like the bodies have switched, because the mother, Sybil now as the mother, is kind of like saying goodbye to the mother at Sybil, and she kisses her on the head, and like she's like, bye, I'm out of here.
I'm gonna go steal some more.
You're gonna see me walking out the door. Trying to get as many song references as I can.
Right.
And Sybil didn't rip her mother to shreds. She just kind of, that's another song there. Okay.
So
anyway,
moving on to the next episode. This is, there's some parts in it that are kind of funny, but there's some gruesome parts of this episode as well. And this is the episode No Strings.
No Strings.
Which has a mobster, gangster type of motif in it again.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very Italian.
Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to TJ to start talking about this one.
So there's I just realized. Anyway, it's about this mobster who is, well, it's not. He kills his sort of like his boss basically, and he finds this guy who is a puppeteer, and he puppeteers kind of these life-size marionettes, and he brings his gunman and his girlfriend, who was once the girlfriend of his boss, and he has the dead body of his ex-partner there, and he wants the guy to make him come to life, because he wants to he never had his moment telling the guy off, and so he wants to do that with this guy, and the guy who's the puppeteer is an older guy, and he's very he's almost too brazen. Like, this guy's coming in here with a gun and is kind of threatening him to do something, and he's like, well, it's my craft, and how dare you touch my marionettes? And I'm like, dude, calm down. You want to get shot here? These don't look like the most stable people to begin with. I don't know why. And he's just kind of like, whoa, we're gonna, he's not too. I don't think he's that smart, but he's. Anyway, so the guy gives him a hook to kind of latch the dead body up so he can do his work. He has this marionette that's sort of this creepy, weird clown. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he does is because the guy who's the mobster dude is Eddie. Eddie's the mobster dude, right?
think so.
He's like, oh, I want to see the guy perform, and he's telling his girlfriend Tiffany, he's like, hey, you got to see this guy. He's really good. He's amazing. He can do so much with this thing. It makes it move, and it's like it's alive. I don't know how he does it. I'm bringing up my accent here, and so he's doing his little puppet dance thing and singing whatever song, and he's like, okay, we brought you something. And he opens up the box, and it's a dead mobster friend, and it's got this. I noticed the blood on his face. It looks very thick. It's like very like. You can tell it's fake. It's like gel blood. You ever see gel blood? The blood that like kind of stays on your face so it doesn't move. Like it looks like that kind of stuff. And his guy, and they tie him up, and they have him marionette the dead dude, and he has him read a script, and it's basically, I don't know the exact dialogue. It's like dialogue like, you're the better person, and I'm a loser, and I'm surprised you didn't kill me a long time ago. I'm dead now, and and that kind of stuff, and he's very like thrilled that like he's saying all this, and there's a point where in the script he's like, the guy's like, I can't do this. This is wrong. I can't read this, and Eddie goes up on stage and has the dead body kiss his ass, literally. Which I thought there's a couple of like light things happen in this. It's not totally dark, even though dead bodies and mobsters, and we find out that even though he knew Tiffany had an affair with this guy, she's a little bit like, I really was in love with you, and that kind of situation. Which I'm sure she doesn't want to get shot. Is probably why. Yeah, and then there's like a spooky kind of wind that comes into the place, and the puppet, the clown puppet that's been on the ground, kind of gets up, and it's very like House on Haunted Hill, the original, with the skeleton at the end, where it's just kind of moving around, and it's like Polly figures Polly, very very Italian mobster. Wasn't it Goodfellas? Which one was Polly? Was it? It wasn't Pesci. Was the other guy was Polly, right?
Gosh, I can't remember now. That's bad.
Yeah, I think it was the other guy. Who's the actor? I forget what the guy did. Anyway, so yeah, so he's like, yeah, and the guy's basically spilling all the backstage gossip. Basically, yeah. He's like, Tiffany would never want just you. She'd want us both because she has to have more than one man in her life. And he goes, because she's been having sex with Nikki, the Eddie's is gun toter there, and he's like, boss, boss, he's like all crazy about it. And Tiffany's like, it's all a lie. It never happened. Yeah, and then it comes to a crescendo, and I'll stop there, and then I'll let you take over.
Yeah, like I said there, and like TJ said, like for instance, the literal kissing of the ass scene is humorous, even though,
yeah, like
we said, they're dealing with dead bodies, and you got a puppeteer that's like making them move. I mean, that whole idea, I'm surprised that they were able to get away with that. It wasn't like somebody was being eviscerated on television, but still, I mean, TJ, didn't you think this was a little more gruesome than some of the other episodes? Now, we're going to talk about another one next week that I think has a kind of gruesome ending to it, but we'll get to that next week. But
I mean, it's not overly gory, but yeah, it's the whole dead body thing being puppeteered is pretty creepy. I mean, and
using hooks and things to,
yeah,
I don't know, just just the thought, even though I know that's not a real human body up there, just the whole thought that somebody would do something like that. That,
Yeah.
I know they're mobsters. I know they're not the good guys, but you know, it's still just almost unthinkable that somebody would do something like that, would have somebody killed or kill them and then put them on display like such a grotesque
Yeah.
display and kind of try to pass it off as an art form or something like that. It's just it's all weird and creepy and
Well, that's like death photos. They used to do
oh
that
yeah,
back in the old days. They used to take the photos of the dead bodies and save them and put them in their albums and display
yeah.
them.
I
And it's
don't
like,
I don't know if this was true or not. Maybe somebody can let me know. But whenever I watched the Canadian horror movie Funeral Home, they talked about the character of Mr. Chalmers, who wasn't a nice guy anyway, but he was basically the mortician.
mm-hmm,
Um, and they were going back and talking about Mr. Chalmers allowing people to take pictures of their dead relatives in the casket because for instance, there was a little boy that had died, they said, and the family had no pictures of him alive because they were so poor.
mm,
So Mr. Chalmers allowed them to take a one last photo of their son, the
yeah,
parents, to take a picture. And I mean, I think of that as being really, ugh, gross and gruesome and all that. But I guess if that was true, if that's what they did back in the old days for people that never had pictures of their relatives and they wanted something tangible to remember them by,
yeah.
I guess that would make sense.
And these aren't, and they weren't like photos, like they weren't like after they were embalmed and stuff. This was like right as they were like dead before any of that. Like
Right.
I saw one who was a little kid, and that's like how what would I guess it's tragic if your child dies, but like would you want a photo of that? It just
Yeah,
that's
you know, granted, I had pictures of all my pets and stuff, but people stuff their pets sometimes. I don't ever want to do anything like that. And I certainly wouldn't want to say, "Oh, you're dead now. I'm going to take a picture of you so, I can remember how you looked when you were dead."
yeah.
It's just not it's not something I want to do, and I don't understand the whole stuffing cats and dogs and other pets. I mean, there's a line in Psycho that Norman Bates says, he talks about stuffing birds. He does that as a
Mhm.
hobby,
Yeah.
basically. And he says some people stuff dogs and cats, but I couldn't do that. Well, I'm like that. Of course, I'm not going out and killing people in the shower either. So and
Oh,
dressing
it's fun. No.
but that just flashed into my brain when I was thinking about that. And of course,
Yeah.
me and Kelly will eventually be talking about Psycho anyway. I think on our next show, Psycho will be on there. Um, but I, but back to this episode, No Strings. I like it. It is entertaining, but again, it may be a little too much for some people to actually see them string a dead body up and making it, move around just like a puppet. But didn't you think, TJ, that the actual puppets, the marionettes that he had were weird and creepy too?
Yeah, his main one, I forget what it had a name, I think, but it was like, yeah, it was bug eyes and um, carrot top looking hair and
Yeah, I did.
old curly jaw's hair before he had a haircut, that kind of thing. And it's like, isn't it like in a sailor suit type of dressed
Yes,
up? And like,
but the
yeah, it's
whole thing is like, I'm expecting this thing to freaking come to life and kill somebody,
It's got that smile, the movie smile. It's got that big giant grin on its face. It's like it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
yeah,
That
it's,
was
yeah.
yeah, very
It's
creepy.
creepier than the corpse. Yeah,
Yeah, creepier than a corpse, exactly. So I'm going to turn it back over to TJ to talk about that twist ending there.
so as the puppet's going, it starts taunting him, and then he finds about the girl, and he's like, yeah, the girl I had an affair with the dude, and she's like, no, it's not true, and he just he shoots the head off of the giant marionette, and then he kills her, and he kills the ex I never know what to call the second in command or whatever. His bodyguard, yeah, let's just say bodyguard to finish it off.
That
So
was
he shoots the bodyguard, he shoots Tiffany, in the head, so she's done. Gives her the Mrs. Loomis treatment, and they're done, and he's just like he thinks the dude thinks he won because they're dead, and the ghost, he's a ghost, he can't. Well, obviously he can do stuff. So then he's gonna shoot the puppeteer guy, because earlier on when he's reading all the stuff he's having him say, and he's like saying it's all the secret stuff, like you did this and I did that and we did all this stuff, and it's all the illegal stuff, and he's like, I shouldn't be reading this. And the guy's like, oh, I'll make sure you don't remember it later. I'm like, well, obviously we know what's going to happen to him. So later on, when it's just the two of them left, he's like, he's got to shoot the guy because he knows everything and he knows too much. So as he's about to shoot him, the dead body now is now another marionette.
Yeah.
But by the ghost, and basically, kills him and strings him up. So it ends with both of them sort of hanging and, moving back and forth, and both dead. And the last shot is the both of them just kind of swinging back and forth. And then, before that, the puppeteer takes his puppet and kind of like holds it like a babe and is like, okay, we're going to get out of here and we'll go on with our lives, I guess. And that's the end of the episode with the two swinging back and forth. Yeah.
But that's gruesome too, I think, in and of itself.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of just shooting in the head and the bloody marionette because it's got the hook sticking out of its arms and it's all bloody, and yeah, it's a creepy last shot.
I wanted to bring up a few things that they were putting in the chat while we were talking about this. Blissful said that was a very Victorian thing of taking pictures of your dead relatives. And she says also women would have a loved one's hair in a brooch that's passed away. That creeps me out too. It's
hair type of thing.
I don't even like, I'm not trying to get into a whole like funeral thing, but I'm not begrudging anybody wanting to say their last goodbyes to a loved one, but I just cannot not bring myself to touch the corpse or to, heaven forbid, kiss the corpse. But I have seen people do it, kiss them on the forehead, touch their hand, and I can't do it. Now I know when my granny passed away, it was really hard on all of us. I was really close to my granny, my mom's mom. And I don't think my mom kissed my granny in the funeral home, but I think she did touch her hand. And I couldn't even do that. I did go up to the casket twice and, looked at her, but what else are you going to do? I just have a belief that the soul is already gone. Some people don't believe that way, but that you're really going to these funerals for the living. You're not going to these funerals for the person that's already passed. So anyway, that's just my take on the whole funeral thing. Texas says when my uncle passed away, his widow had her family videotape the funeral. I was furious. She wanted me to stand beside his coffin.
Mm.
I think I would be upset too if somebody wanted me to do that. And Texas said he refused at first, but then I relented, but I didn't smile and I looked away. Well, I wouldn't want to be smiling either. Um, but anyway, before we all get bummed out now talking about people dying,
Yeah.
we'll move on to the next episode, which has got a kind of humorous slant to it. And it does have a mummy. This is the second one that concerns a mummy in the mix, and that's the grave robber.
Well, the moth had a mommy.
Yeah.
Debbie Harry's mommy. Anyway.
Yeah, technically, yeah. That's right.
So two archaeologists, well, in their guide, Ahmed, because it's always Ahmed or something, or Ahmed. It's usually something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So Dr. Harold and Eileen, I forget what her name is, something like that. They're looking for an ancient pharaoh type situation here. They're like, well, if we find this, we found like the biggest thing, like it's going to make us all rich and we're all going to be famous because of this. And so they go into this chamber, and first they have to go through like the main, like the watcher, basically. I guess there's a watcher when they bury I don't know if this is how it works or this is just how the episode made a rationale of everything. They're like, you gotta go through this first thing before you go to the main guy. So like some kind of chamberlain or something like that. I don't know, whatever you call it. And they take off he find his sarcophagus and they take off the lid, and there's a mummy there, and it has this gold necklace. So and Ahmed wants to get the necklace. He's like, oh, we should just grab this necklace and take it with us. And the other two are like, no, just leave it there. We'll get it on our way back after we go through the main area. And once you know, the mummy's alive, and it kills Ahmed. He's dead.
Yeah.
Well, Ahmed's dead, and then it wasn't that comedic up until this point, but then from here on, it's a comedy.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, not that it was that serious, but it was just kind of an interesting jump from sort of a thriller type situation to, like, it goes from Indiana. Well, I guess that's how Indiana Jones was, but then I think that was a kind of comedy all the way through. But whatever. So the mummy comes back and attacks them and is going to kill them. And Aileen sort of like is trying to get the mummy to stop, and she's kind of hitting on him too, which is kind of like she's like, "Hey there, you look pretty good there," and like, it's kind of funny. And Dr. Harold's just kind of a goofy type of character. Bye, Darren.
Bye,
good night or good morning or whatever.
Yeah, it's probably morning where he's at or getting close.
But yeah, so he's going to kill them, and because that's his job, he's supposed to stop them from coming in there in the first place. So they're like, "Well, don't kill us." And they're like, "Well, let's play a game. Let's play a game." And the guy's like, "Oh, I like games. Okay, well, that's good. You found an ancient mummy, thousands of years old, who likes games, and we'll play for our freedom, basically."
Yeah.
So they're playing various weird games, like he arm wrestles him, and the mummy's super strong and takes the dude down pretty easy. Until they finally figure out until Aileen comes up with the whole let's do a card game, and they decide to do strip poker.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Harold's like, well, if we get all the bandages off of him, he'll just be nothing but dust. So they figure if they can win the strip poker game, they'll stop the mummy. They can get out of there. But they're also trapped in there. They can't get out because the door is sealed. And the only way to get out is the necklace that the guy has. The mummy has powers. And that's the only. It's basically also a lock. It's the only thing that can unlock the door so they can get out. So that's the whole point of the game. And because he's either they win and take the amulet and get out, or they lose and they both die. So as they're playing the game, they're cheating basically.
Yeah.
They're lying on how the game is played. They're saying what cards mean something and then other cards mean something else. And then when he has a good hand, they're like, well, it doesn't work today. It's not supposed to work during this time. It'll work a couple of days later or whatever. So they're really playing unfair, but they don't want to die, which makes total sense. So yeah, they keep taking off bandages, and then the mummy sort of goes into a trance and he stops moving, and they're like, is that it? Are we free? Can we get out of here? And he comes back and he's like, oh, I was astral projecting, and he basically went to Vegas and learned about gambling. So now he knows how to play. So they're screwed because now Dr. Harold starts losing clothing, and he's pretty much down to his skivvies. And the mummy's like, well, put on the bandages, because the mummy's now pretty much dressed in all his clothes. And the mummy's like, put on the bandages, it'll keep you warm. But the bandages also give the mummy his strength. So now we're with the mummies dressed up in their clothes, and then he's starting to put on the mummy's what do you call it? Strands of how do you call it? What the hell is the mummy wrapping called? What the hell is that called? Boy, I'm not losing names now. I'm losing regular words. I can't remember anymore. Bandages, Jesus Christ.
That's what I was going to say, but then I was like, isn't that what it is?
I couldn't say the word bandages for some reason. It was not working. Anyway, so they're like, shouldn't you have turned to dust? And it's like, well, I guess not. So they end up losing the game. But there's another stipulation that if they lose, Harold has to take Tapak, whatever the mummy's name is. He has to take his place. And, I just spoiled it that they lose. So I mean, there's another twist too, but that's basically what happens up until that point.
So again, I like this episode. This was, besides like the guy getting killed off a little bit earlier, it is a pretty much humorous episode for the most part. And I think that's probably why I had fun with it, because of that humorous aspect. Because, we had the No Strings episode right before this, which was a little more gruesome than it was funny. And so we've talked about this before, that sometimes if you have really dark episodes or you have a kind of more gruesome episode, sometimes it's better. And I think it's better for the series if you have a little bit lighter episode, so somebody's just not watching dark, and they just keep getting, because we're still going to be talking about one that I think is, well, a couple more that are pretty dark. And then a couple that have humorous parts in them. But I think this was a good entry. I liked the interaction between the grave robbers and the mummy, and the fact that he could teleport and go to Vegas and beat them at their own game, basically, because they were cheating. They were
Yeah,
not. They thought, oh, he's dumb. He doesn't know the rules of poker, so we're just going to screw him over. And they didn't count on him, teleporting to Vegas and learning all the rules and coming back. And like I said, beating them at their own game.
yeah,
So a fun episode, um, which still has a twist to it. It still has kind of like a comeuppance type of EC Comics type of feel because
yeah,
let's face it, guys, you screw somebody over, you're not going to get away with it. Not in these stories.
yeah,
So I'm going to turn it back over to TJ to give that other twist.
yeah. So they lose the game, and Harold has to become the mummy. So Harold gets wrapped up in the bandages, and he has to now take the place of Tupac. And guess what? Aileen doesn't want to stay there and rot, so she's like, "Hey, what if I go with you and we can go have some fun, do some things, and whatever." And he's very thrilled about having a companion. And yeah, and then Harold's stuck there in prison forever, and the two of them go off together, and yeah, she just leaves him there, and
basically she's a traitor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, these aren't the nicest. I mean, Harold's a poor sap who just. They both sort of came up with the idea to cheat Tupac out of all this stuff. So I mean, but hey, whatever. The makeup's pretty good on him, though. It's very.
Yeah. He's
got the drawn out, eye sockets, and but it still has some expression on his face, and it still moves, but it's very like he looks like he was in the oven for too long.
Yeah, they baked him a little bit too long.
Yeah, he was in the what's that? The machine that takes out all the moisture. He was in that machine.
Like those dehydrators.
That's right. He was in the dehydrator for too long.
He got turned into a potato chip or potato skin or something.
Oh, the guy who played the mummy, if everybody remembers I think it's the first Arnold Schwarzenegger movie ever, was Hercules in New York, aka Hercules Goes Bananas, and that was Arnold Stang, and he was an actor who's been around since like maybe even the 30s, maybe earlier than that. Yeah, he was around. He was on all the old. He was on all old TV shows, and back at nobody here remembers stuff from the 50s and 40s and stuff like that. But he a lot of voices too. You probably would remember his voice in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of it off the top of my head, but as soon as I saw the name, I was like, oh, I know who that guy is, and I knew watching the episode just by the voice that he was the mummy. He's kind of Barney Fife-ish. He's like a little guy with glasses and like a mousy face. But yeah, so yeah, that was the end of the episode. I guess it's a happy episode for certain characters, and it's sad
for traitor episodes. Maybe.
Yeah,
and that was the mummy, and so I hope I don't have to go in there and quite sing me down. I don't know. Every once in a while he's barking, and nobody wants Steve to get up and say "shut up," do they? So
shut up.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to one of the final 4 episodes. Sounds like I'm talking about basketball. The Yattering and Jack. This is a Christmas episode, believe
I know. I forgot about that until I started watching it. I was like, oh, damn, it's Christmas.
And I watch it every year around Christmas time. There, I watch this one's and Seasons of Belief, and I watched that Tales from the Crypt episode where Larry Drake is the killer Santa Claus, and there's several of them that I watch around Christmas time. So I like this one. I think it's very, very funny. What's that guy's name that plays the Yattering? Phil
Will
Fondacaro.
Fondacaro, yep, from Troll. He played the troll, and he also played one of the guy who was friends to the family, and so he played two parts of that. And he's in. Isn't he one of the Ghoulies in Ghoulies 4? Which Ghoulies is? He's in one of the Ghoulies, right?
He may be. Yeah, it sounds right. But I love.
He's in Willow.
Yeah,
Land, he's in Land of the Dead. I forgot he was in Land of the Dead.
That's right. I love the interaction between the Yattering and the character of Jack. Um, I think that was a really, really good dynamic. And I'm going to go take care of Sammy, and I'm going to let TJ get started with talking about this episode.
Okay. So the Yattering and Jack's played by Anthony Carbone. I don't know if anybody knows him from like Pit and the Pendulum and a lot of old he was in Bucket of Blood too. And it has Danielle Brisbois from like All in the Family, and I think she was on Broadway and stuff. And yeah, it's an interesting cast. It's fun. So Jack is a regular type guy. He comes home. It's Christmas, which I forgot until I watched this movie. And Jack, it's a little odd. He's sort of, these weird things start happening in the house, and he's just sort of, it's just regular, the house is settling. That's why it's making noises, and it's just shifting a little bit. So things are falling down off the wall, and weird things are happening. And he's like, okay, Sarah. He's like, whatever happens, he's fine with it. And it's interesting because at first you're like, oh, okay, it's just, even though he knows it tilts from the dark side, so something's got to be up. You're watching it, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, he's sort of just making light of everything because it's not really anything going on, you would think. But this is, like I said, it's a Tales from the Dark Side episode, so there's something nefarious going on. So all these weird things start happening in the house, and he's just ignoring them and letting them happen. At one point, there's a broken mirror in the house, and he's like, oh, these things just happen. And he ends up looking in the mirror, and then as he's leaving, we see a little kind of creature, demons, just sort of mad and kind of whipping around, and then we see, he goes over to his fish tank, and the fish is basically cooked. And he's like, oh, I must have had the heat in the fish tank up too high, and that's how the fish died.
How his fish bowled.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the little monster is sort of, and then there's a little monster which he's not really paying attention to, but it's like ripping up the furniture and biting stuff, and he's like, oh. He's just like trying to ignore it. His daughter shows up, looking like Kathy from Demons.
Oh yeah,
80s curly 80s hair, the perm, like long hair perm. She looks very what is it? Jennifer Beals Flashdance kind of look. And she sees everything all kind of messed up, and she's like, Dad, what happened? And he's like, just kind of like brushing it off and not really paying attention to it. And we get some carolers outside, and they're like, oh, let's go watch the carolers while the demon's sort of in there messing everything up. And I noticed it's funny, as I'm watching it, I noticed the backdrop behind the carolers is a backdrop. It looks so fake.
Yeah.
So it's so fake. I mean, seriously, like you cannot not see how fake it is. If this was like cleaned up in like 2K or something like that, you could really see it hilariously. Yeah. But even like in this condition, it was like, wow, that's such a fake backdrop. They did not have And it was probably shot in the middle of the summer, and I bet, and
production values were definitely not used on that.
Yeah, I mean, like the house looked fine. The whole, like the demon behind the mirror and stuff, like all that stuff looked cool. So anyway, so the story's not just about Jack and his daughter. It's about the Yattering, which is this sort of demon creature that Satan has sent to Jack to, for some reason, we don't know why right now. And we get a scene between the Yattering and the devil. And the devil, the actor who plays the devil, I can't remember his name, but he was in Sorry, Wrong Number. I think he was in that one. No. Which one was he in? Now I have to look it up. Now, damn it! I thought I knew what he was in. Tom Newman, who played Beelzebub in this, obviously the devil.
Yeah.
Oh, he's in all the clone by the telephone. He's the which one was he? He was the guy that was like not the assistant, not the manager. That was Dick Miller, but he was like the other guy. If anybody remembers the episode, anyway.
Was he like the movie mogul guy?
That's Quentin Karp. That's I remember that. Yeah. Okay. Don't ask me how I can't remember bandages, but so anyway, the devil who I don't know if this was part of the comedy, but the devil looks like a when Herman Munster dressed up when he's driving the Dracula car in the race, he looks like a leather daddy. He looks like I was like, this is like he should be in the bar in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, I think.
That would be hilarious.
Because he's like leather and
exactly
chains. It's just funny. So there's like the scene. So there's this huge guy, and then there's the little Yattering, and it's just like a little. I use juxtaposition again too for this. So between the two sizes, and it's like in a fog, and because it's spooky. And he's like, you gotta. So he's like, well, I keep doing stuff, and he's not paying attention. He's ignoring it. I had his wife cheat on him, and he still was like, whatever. Nice to see you. Have a good time having sex. I'm gonna leave. Like kind of like.
And the character of Jack goes around saying, "Que sera, sera."
Yeah, I got that.
His daughter gets so upset with him at one point. Stop saying that.
Yeah, he's like, that's all you keep saying. You're not taking it. You're not doing anything. You're not reacting to anything. And she's kind of mad about that. And he's like, she says, he's like, you're like your mother. And she's like, don't ever say that again.
Yeah, and she gets really upset with that.
So yeah, and she's like, just do something, show some, but he's just like, doesn't, because of he knows, so he knows about the Yattering. He knows it's a creature, and he's telling his daughter, look, we just ignore it and we'll leave, and we'll forget about this. And the devil's in the Yattering says, well, why don't I just like grab him and force him into hell or whatever? And the devil's like, no, that's against the rules. You can't do that. You can't touch that. So as they're about to leave, with the daughter and him about to leave, the Yattering grabs him, which is a no. So, and then he's sort of now visible, so everybody can see him now. And we find out, well, I guess this is a twist, so maybe I'll stop there. I'll stop there, and you can go.
As I said, this is a Christmas episode. I like it. The whole, like I said, the dynamic between the Yattering, Phil Fondacaro's character, and even the guy playing the devil. But I must agree, but looks like they should have come from the leather bar on Nightmare on Elm Street 2. TJ is right about that. But there's one dynamic between Jack and his daughter. There's a dynamic between Jack and the Yattering. And then there's another dynamic between the Yattering and the devil.
Yeah.
And then there's all this craziness going on. I mean, the Yattering's tearing the pillows apart. He's boiling the fish. He's causing the books to fall out of the bookcase, and just whatever. Plus the other stuff they talked about happening in the past,
Yeah.
with sending his wife lustful thoughts until she had an affair, and nothing phases Jack. He just does his hand like this and says, "Que sera, sera," and just, goes on. And I think throughout the course of the episode, most viewers are going to get just as irritated as his daughter within the episode. It's like, why don't you react? How can you, but there's people like that in real life that I'm not saying they never show emotion or never get upset about anything, but don't those people just make us regular people? Don't they just piss you off, kind of, that they never react, they never get upset, it seems, over anything. You could tell them they lost their job, they don't get upset. You could tell them, I hate to say it this way, but there are people like that you could tell them either they have a terminal illness, somebody that they love has a terminal illness. No, absolutely no emotion. I, on the other hand, would go to pieces. And so I'm not saying I hate people like that. I don't, but it's just, you cannot wrap your head around the fact that somebody nothing ever shakes them at all. Blissful says, I can't be like that. I'm too Irish. Yeah. What they say about Irish people, and especially redheaded Irish people, or just, redheads in general, that
You should be with me driving. I don't let anybody get away with anything, and I yell at everybody, even though.
Oh my God, Steve!
I will say, stop yelling at people. What are you yelling for? They're 3 cars ahead. You can't blame the person in front of you. Yes, I can, because they're right there.
Exactly. You're gonna get mad at the person closest to you, and not somebody up there 3 cars.
Yeah, I'm mad at them too, but I'm more mad at the person right in front of me, because it's their fault. It's their fault because they're right there.
So anyway, my final thoughts on a really good episode. Again, one of my favorite episodes, and I don't think you can go wrong with this episode at all.
Because it goes. It's not just funny; it goes over the top. The chicken scene is so good.
Oh my gosh, yes! Because he gave his daughter pearls for Christmas, and the chicken ends up with pearls on it, and it's
the chicken he's like, I have a turkey for, is it the turkey, whatever, he's like a turkey for dinner, and the turkey, the Yattering makes it come to life, so it's like, and it's gobbling, it's going gobble, gobble, and it's got it looks weird too, because it's like the chicken, and it's got the neck sticking out of the, so it's a little, it looks a little, with the leather daddy, and then there's
yeah,
I won't say what it looks like, but you figure what it looks like.
Yeah,
figure it out, folks.
Y'all minds do the math there.
But if at one point it flies to the top of the tree, and it's like the star on the tree, and then the tree starts spitting out presents at everybody, and the Yattering eats the present at one point and spits it out, and after that scene, the devil's like, "Is that all you can do? Is just eat presents?" It's like so fun.
Yeah, pull stuffing out of pillows on the couch and stuff. Blissful says, I'm unnaturally redheaded, LOL. So I'm going to turn it back over to TJ, who's going to give the little twist, the little reveal here.
So we find out now that the Yattering has touched him, he now basically owns it. It's now his creature to control.
Let's just say that.
Yeah. It's not as familiar because, well, we found out why the demon wants Jack so bad is his mother was a witch. So it's sort of like he's being punished now and being dragged to hell because of his relationship to his, having his mother be a witch. And so, but now the demon is basically linked to him and is now his servant and slave for the rest of eternity. So the Yattering goes from being mad and yelling at him to like, yes, master, yes, sir, I'll do whatever, whatever you want. And that's kind of basically how there's some more dialogue between everybody, but it was like him and his daughter and the Yattering go off together and live happily ever after. And he does make because him and his wife are estranged, and he's like, well, maybe I'll give your mother a visit, and maybe we'll try to work things out. And the daughter's very happy about that. So it kind of has a nice, happy ending and pretty lighthearted.
I like the one part near the end where the Yattering is kind of, and he says, "What'd you say there, Yat?" And he's nothing, and but I just always like that little part there. That was
and he's cleaning up the mess with the little fireplace brush. It's so cute.
Oh man!
But yeah,
such a great episode, and another really good episode for this final season, in my opinion. So that brings us to the episode that I absolutely do not like. And that's Llama. I think this is so lame, this episode. To me, this is probably, dare I say it, probably the worst episode of the series. I hate this episode, and I hate to say that, but I do. So I'm going to let TJ talk about Seymour Llama for a little bit here. See how he liked it.
So let's start with that. It's not the greatest episode. I find one of the characters kind of funny, and they made me crack up. So the actor Divine is in this.
Yeah.
Which Divine is so good in this. Sorry, the episode's bad. Even with the dialogue he has to say, the way he says it, it just made me laugh. Almost everything he said made me laugh.
I will agree that Divine is the only good thing about this episode.
And it's sad he died before because he wanted to play, because he wasn't a drag queen. He dressed up as a female characters in these movies, Drawn Waters, because they were friends. And he wanted to be a regular actor. Like, he wanted to do male parts. Because, in Hairspray, he plays two different characters. Was it Hairspray? He does play a male character. Yeah, he plays like the guy who owns one of the businesses that is. And he was going to be in an episode of Married with Children as one of Peggy Bundy's uncles, but he had passed away before that episode, and they ended up having King Kong Bundy and some other actors in it. But he's good in this. I'm sorry. I hate this. The folks aren't that great. David Gale from Reanimator is the father, and he's fine. And the mother's all right too. The young boy is kind of a pain in the ass. He's not that good.
Yeah, he was the most annoying. I just wanted to just slap him silly because I couldn't stand him.
Yeah, it was. Who was that kid? Let me look up this episode. Also, it hasn't aged well. It's vaguely racist because Divine and this other woman are Asian-ish. Mm-hmm. Like, even though it's mentioned, like, I did write some stuff down about this one because I didn't want to insult anybody. It's like Middle Eastern, but it's also like they mentioned the Far East, and like, I don't think you can't make this episode now. I don't think it would go over too well.
I don't.
I mean, it wasn't mean, but it's any racial stereotype like they're doing here. It's kind of I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get all into that, but I just did. But I'm going to stop. So,
TJ's gonna stop before we get booted off of YouTube.
yeah, before I actually get in trouble. Because, like, one of the characters is named Madame Wu, and she is not slightly Asian at all. I mean, you know. Anyway, David Gill sort of like this. So it's this couple, and they're sort of the Strand family, and they're sort of their son Seymour is sort of a lazy layabout, annoying, like I know it all. Know it all kind of pain in the ass. Played by J.D. Roth, who people might know him if they've seen him. What was he in?
That name is familiar.
Like he's been in a lot of things, but he never did like that quintessential movie that you would go, oh, I remember him from that movie. Yeah, I'm looking up his IMDb, and I don't like recognize any of this crap.
Oh, really?
He produced a lot of stuff. Like he's a big producer now. Like he produces stuff now. Like he only did like 20 things, but he produced a bunch of stuff. Like he produced Unidentified with Demi Lovato. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know. I have no idea what that is.
He looks familiar. I guess he was a 90s TV host.
Yeah, he's been around since the 80s, and he did stuff in the 80s and 90s, and then he stopped like acting, and then he did some voices and stuff like that, and yeah, he was on some show I never heard of, and yeah, but he's like one of those '80s kids that you look at him and go, I know who that is. I've seen him on TV, and I've seen him in things. And
I've never heard of the Fun House, but that's something that he hosted.
Yeah, he was in some movie, Death Mask, in '84. I didn't see that one. I don't know what that was.
Huh.
He did voices on Johnny Quest. Yeah. Oh, he did an episode of Our Real Monsters. I love that show. We should review that show. That would be great. I love that show.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
You never watched? Oh. See, there was a good point in like the later 90s. There was a lot of horror cartoon type things. There was that. There was Courage the Cowardly Dog. There was a bunch of shows around that time. And like, I was probably out of the age range to be watching them, but I watched them and I thought they were great.
It's okay. I still watch Scooby Doo.
Well, see, that's classic. Like you could watch that at any age, I think, especially since it's been around since 1960 and 69 or whatever. So I mean, yeah. And well, anyway, Courage was more adult, anyways. It wasn't like a kid's. I mean, I didn't think it was for kids. They wouldn't have got the references too, because there were a lot of horror movie and references like that. But anyway, so Seymour Lama. Let's get to that. So we have the family and the kid. Well, and the kid sort of the father's always telling him he's not worth anything and he can't do anything and whatever. And we get this ambassador from the Middle East somewhere, and his assistant, and they're like, your son Seymour is he's very important in our country, and we need him, and we're going to give you money, and you're going to be rich, and he's going to be well taken care of, and he's going to be a ruler of our land. But there's and at first they don't believe it because they're like, this kid, he's we never thought he was important to anybody. I don't know. They make some kind of comment like that, which is kind of mean. But I mean, and they start doing all these rituals to sort of indoctrinate Seymour into the culture or whatever. And here's what I think it's funny. So Madame Wu starts throwing rice at him, and and it's like, this is rice from our country. And then he hands the father a piece of paper. Divine hands him the piece of paper, and he goes, this is the recipe for the rice we just threw at you. and he says, like, now it's time for the anticlimax. And that was funny, the anticlimax. And there's a lot of funny stuff. I think Divine says a lot of funny stuff in this. The other lines aren't that great, and overall it's not that great. But I think there's some funny lines that I think are in this, and some interactions with people. But yeah, I'm going to just more talk about the things I like about this and to really explain the episode, because it's really not that complicated an episode. So there's a point where they're like, all right, we got to get him to the where our land, wherever, whatever weird, what country they say it's called Lopu.
Yeah.
And we have to take him to Lopu, and we do find out that they're gonna really throw him a volcano. That's basically what it is. He's a sacrifice to the gods or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Seymour goes, well, I have the ability to like do whatever I want, and they're like, yeah. They're like, well, you're gonna plug up that volcano and not throw me in, and you're just basically gonna wait on me hand and foot, and so I'm the ruler. You have to do what I say. And they're like, yeah, I guess we kind of have to. So they're gonna fly him back to the land. So Divine's on the phone, and he's like, no, it's a place called Lopu, and he does something funny. So he's like, no, it's not. No, that's not where it is. It's further east. No, further east. And it's just funny. I mean, you laughed at me doing it, so he does it a lot better in the episode than I just did it. And he's like, and he asks the mother, so what's the address? And she's like, 254 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he's telling the operator, because this is back then when he's like the father. There's another thing. The father goes, make sure you call collect. Remember back when you had to not have the person whose phone it is, you didn't have to pay the long distance charge. The person making the call had to pay the long distance charge, so you'd be like, So no one remembers that, I bet, except for maybe us older people. But,
yeah, really old, ancient.
Yeah, and I'm in our mid-30s.
People.
Us were in our mid-30s. That's what I'm saying. Anyway. Anyway.
Well, I'm older than that, so.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, then that's when the twist happens at that point. I mean, we've been talking about it, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about it. You guys not liking it.
I mean, I think what I disliked the most was that damn kid about this. I think that's what totally turned me off of this episode. It wasn't David Gale. It wasn't even the actor that played. It wasn't Divine. I would probably say Divine was probably the best thing about the episode. But
the mother wasn't bad. She had a couple of good moments, but other than
But that kid, like I said, I wanted to reach through the television screen and just slap him in the face, just because he was this self-important jerk.
Even before that, and I think that's the point, though. We're supposed to hate him. So I think as far as that goes, he did it well because you didn't like him at all. But maybe he's a good actor and not a bad character, but yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to keep going on and on about it. I'm going to switch it back over to TJ to get to the twist, because this next episode is one of my all-time favorites.
So she's like 254, and he's like, this isn't 255. And she's like, I know what house I live in. It's 244. And then he's like, Din Don, screwed up.
Yeah. Sorry, we're taking all your shit away.
He's like, oh shoot, well, we got the wrong house. Bye. And they take all their in the parent. This is kind of a cute ending where they're taking all the jewelry and stuff away, and they're like fighting them for it, and the mother's like, no, give me that back, I want this. No. And then the JD, the carrot, Seymour had fallen asleep because he's like so content with his new life coming, and then he wakes up after everybody's gone, and he's like, okay, do this, and I want all this done. And he's like, hey, where'd everybody go? And then the father and mother slowly come near him, and they're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
So it ends, and it was all right.
Yeah.
It's not a great episode, but
Okay,
that's a
maybe
moment.
it's not completely lame because it does have Divine in it and it does have
That's funny.
Joe in it.
Whatever nationality he's supposed to be, he's fine in this.
Right. So that brings us to the next to last episode we're going to talk about tonight. Sorry, Right Number, which is
Oh,
based on a Stephen King story.
okay.
And this has to be right up there near the top. Like, because I love the Word Processor of the Gods, which is one we talked about during the first season, which was also based on a Stephen King story. And here again, here's a really great story, one that really, really works for this series. But yet, I think people forget about these little gems sometimes by the time you've gotten to the final season of something. They forget about the little wins. They just think of how many, less than great episodes that there were by a final season of a series. Um, but I'm just going to ask TJ if he cares if I talk about this one first, since this is a big Stephen King one.
No, I did want to say something about it. I think it's
Sure.
one of the top 10 best episodes. It's also the best, maybe because it's a Stephen King written story, that it's a perfect story from beginning to end, and it's a short, but it's a full movie. It's a full story. It has everything you would want. It has, like I said, it's the beginning, middle, and end. It has 3 acts.
Mm-hmm.
It has character development. There's not a lot of characters, but it's got a character development that you're following.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a perfect movie, small movie.
Yeah.
You see what's going on, and you get explanations, and it's because they're a little. I'm toting myself a little bit, but so my short movie that won an award. I'm going to keep saying that. We had a festival this past weekend, and it was like a 3-day festival, and we saw a bunch of movies and stuff. And mine was in a short block, and there was a bunch of other shorts. Then between, mine was 3 minutes, and there was something up to 16 minutes, and mine included. I wrote more than what ended up being filmed, because I wrote something that was it's going to be more I wrote a lot of backstory and stuff, so I managed to whittle down probably something that could have been a full movie into a 3-minute short. So all the stuff that I wanted to be in there couldn't fit in there, so I just kind of had the basics. And it's hard to put something in a short space. Thank you, Blissful. So it's hard to put something into a small amount of space and make have a big journey for a character and development, and so that's hard. So we had some reviews about my short, and I was like, you're always critical about what other people say about what you do. So I was kind of I was like, hey, you didn't know what you're talking about, and that kind of stuff. But then I was like, yeah, but all the stuff that I knew about the whole story, those people didn't know, so they can only go by what they saw. So after a couple of minutes of hate reading, I was like, oh, that makes sense, because
I went through that. When you work hard on something, whether it's a short film or a story, or and you get really elaborate sometimes, and maybe do a whole novel or a full-length movie. I understand what TJ's talking about. I've read Steve some of my poems before, and he laughs at them, and I'm like, dude, why are you laughing at these? These are really personal poems to me. And he says, Dana, do you really like, do you really feel that way? And like, why do you got to describe it in a certain way? And
Yeah.
eh, I think sometimes people really, like TJ says, they don't know the whole backstory to something, and it's hard to for them to put themselves in the creator's shoes, so to speak, and be able to look at it from that viewpoint. So, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so it was just, I'm just trying to make the comparisons how this is a short that's like, they had a good amount of time. They had 20, 21 minutes or whatever to tell a story. And I think they really did a good job. Like in my shorts block, there was another short that was like 16 minutes. And that was a really good, like beginning. It was like a full story in 16 minutes and they had more time to work with. So I understand like a lot of people like that one, especially since the person who directed it, they got somebody who was actually famous to be in it. And that was like, oh, because it was like a local horror people in that short block, and I was like, oh damn, they had because I was watching we were in the theater watching it, and I was like, that looks like somebody. And then at the end of it, I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to see who it was because I don't want to act like I'm being a jerk and saying someone because you can get if I could have gotten somebody like hella famous to be in my short movie that I made for nothing, basically, in my house, I would have had them be in it too. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, so I'm watching this and like, that looks like somebody. And then as I was watching the movie, I was like, damn, that's that person. And I was like, wow, I wish I had gotten them to be in my thing. But anyway, the actor in mine's pretty good. But anyway, also mine has no dialogue, so it's like I can understand. Not understanding that I had more to my story. But anyway, just the fact that, like I said, this is a very good full story.
Oh, yes.
And I really liked it. And the acting's good. Deborah Harmon's in this, who she's not in Nightmare on Elm Street, but she played the mom in Just the 10 of Us, where Heather Langenkamp was in, and Brooke Beast and Joanne Willette were all in. So she's horror related, and she was in the Tom Hanks movie Bachelor Party.
Yes.
She was a snotty friend but she knew about the strip club and everything like that. And So also, because it's a Stephen King story, there is a character who is a writer.
Yes, there. And another thing, if you look really closely, there's a film that the writer is watching.
Wait a minute. Let me put on my hoodie.
Exactly. The hint.
Hoodie. Let me put on my hoodie. And there was a.
Yeah, there you go.
Excuse me, but what were you saying? There was something in there.
Yes, there is a film that is playing that the writer is watching. That's supposed to be a film based on his first book. And what is the film? But none other than George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And a sharp eye and fans of Dawn of the Dead will say, hey, wait a minute, that's Dawn of the Dead.
Now remember, Rubenstein produced this show. That was the only reason Dawn of the Dead was in this show. And no one will ever have Dawn of the Dead in their TV shows or movies in the background because of this. But anyway, those are the things I wanted to say, Dana. Go ahead.
Rubenstein will come after you if you try to do that. I don't think Romero, it bothered him that much. But Rubenstein, that a totally different thing. Yes, you are correct.
And John Harrison directed this episode also, which makes perfect sense. Now, I'm sorry. Take it away, Dana.
So this is a story about a writer, but it's also a story about the writer's wife, too, pretty much, because we start out with a family setting. The father is trying to, I think he's having writer's block. He's having a little trouble getting started with his new book or new story or whatever. And he's not feeling real good and stuff like that. Can't sleep and stuff. And you hear the wife explaining to, I guess, a friend that she's talking to on the phone. She said, Bill, he's always like this when he gets ready to start a new book. He can't sleep and all that stuff. And so the kids, a couple of their kids are like running around, and the little boy is wanting his father to allow him to watch Spider's Kiss, which is is Dawn of the Dead,
Yeah.
but they're calling it Spider's Kiss, which was the name of his father's first book. And the older sibling, the sister, is like, ew, I don't want to watch that. We're not going to watch that. And besides, it's coming on too late.
And,
And
and the mother says edit. He has to edit out the gory
added
part.
all the gory parts out. And she also agrees to let Jeffy, I think they call him, allow him to watch the first hour of it. And then his father is going to tape the rest of it for him because he's got to go to bed early because he's a young kid. So this is, I guess, probably about the time like call waiting was getting big. And so while she's talking to her friend on the phone, she's getting another call because you can see the little button blinking on the phone. And she says, "Oh, Lois, I got another call's coming through." And she's already talked about her other daughter, Polly, who is away at college, and how Polly's been so upset lately, doesn't feel like she's fitting in at college, and
Yeah.
she's homesick and all that. So she presses the button and she says, "Hello." And it's somebody, a woman's voice. It sounds like crying, really, really crying and saying, "Please, please," and then she doesn't get all of it out before it's disconnected. And the mother's visibly upset because she knows this is someone in her family that's made the phone call. Her first thought is her daughter, Polly. So she gets back on the phone with Lois. She says, "Polly just called here crying." And then she hung up. So I got to get off here and I got to call her back and see how she's doing.
Mm.
So see what's wrong. So she calls Polly, but Polly comes to the phone and Polly's gloriously happy because she's going to a dance with a cute boy, and things are going great. So it wasn't Polly that called upset. So then she thinks it must be her mother because she keeps telling her husband, "No, Bill, it was someone in my family." Because he said, "Well, maybe somebody just called a wrong number." And she's like, "No." So she calls her mother, and her mother's like, "No, it wasn't me, dear." And then she starts wanting to say, "By the way, if you get your mother on the phone, sometimes you can't get off the phone with her." So this line was kind of funny. She says, "Mom, I'm sorry. I've got to go. I've got diarrhea."
Yeah. That was a great line. Yeah, that was a great.
That was probably one of the funniest parts
I'm
of
glad you
this.
said it so I could say it with you.
And then, so she says, "Who could it be?" She says, "Polly's okay, Mom's okay." And then her eyes get wide and she says, "Donnie," her daughter, or I mean, her sister, Dawn, her younger sister, Dawn. Um, she says, "Oh, it's Dawn, Bill." She said, "Dawn's alone in the house with the baby. Oh, something's happened. Uh, Dawn's husband's away on a business trip." And so she tries to, or they try to call, and they can't get anybody. There's like a busy signal, and the wife is freaking out. And so Bill he calls the operator and says, "Can you try to get connected to this number, and then of course the operator finds out that he's Bill Wiederman, the Stephen King-esque author, and she's going on, "Oh, Mr. Wiederman, I love your books, blah blah," and he says, "I'm that's great, but right now I need to get a hold of my sister-in-law," and she's like, "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir." So she can't get Dawn either. She can't because she says it seems like the line's been disconnected or off the hook. So they have to go to Dawn's house. It looks like from the outside of the house that somebody has broken into the house. The wife is about to lose it. And Bill has a gun in the glove compartment. And he says this line, and I don't know if this is a line that Stephen King might have used with his family, but it's booga booga. He says that all the time, and he opens right before they get out of the car to go up to Dawn's house. He opens the glove compartment and gets this gun out, and she's like, "When did you get that?" He tells her, and he says booga booga, and then they go up. It looks like somebody's broken in. The wife's still panicking. And they gradually, they don't have to force this door because it already is open. So they go in, and they see Dawn's arm like hanging over the chair arm, and the wife is like, "Oh God, Bill!" She's just freaking out. So it turns out that Dawn is not dead. Dawn was waiting for Bill's movie to come on. She was waiting for Spider's Kiss to come on, and she fell asleep. And
The Walkman.
she's got the
The
Walkman.
Walkman's kids.
And I love the way the character Bill looks whenever she wakes up. She doesn't wake up and scream or anything. She wakes up and says, "Oh my gosh, guys, you should have called. The house is a mess." Instead of like, I would have screamed my head off if I woke up out of dead sleep and somebody was leaning over me. Um, and Bill says, "Hi, Dawn." And also the baby's been teething and chewed on Bill's book, and she's like, "Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry the baby's teething." So they basically say, "Hey, it looks like somebody tried to force your door, Dawn." She said, "No, that was my husband. I think his name is Jerry." She said, uh, he was mad because he had to take a whiz real bad, so he took a screwdriver to it. I guess they had gotten locked out or
He
something.
had time to find a screwdriver. He should have just peed in the woods.
Exactly. So, so she said it wasn't her that called. So basically, they never figure out who called. Um, and so they go back home. Bill's still not feeling real good, but he's going to sit up and try to watch Spider's Kiss, and
Up the dead.
he promised Jeff that he would tape it for him and all that. Yes,
This happens in the movie. Woo.
And so this is not giving the real big twist away. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you this part of it before I turn it over to TJ before we give the twist. So the wife goes to bed, and she wakes up sometime in like 3 a.m. or something, and she's expecting Bill to be beside her in the bed. He's not. So she goes into the den or his writing room or whatever where he was watching TV. And she's like, "Hey, big guy." And this is a very disturbing scene. And she said, "It's time to go to bed. We got to go to bed." And he's not responding. And she's, kind of trying to shake him awake because she thinks he's asleep. And she's like, "Bill?" And she shakes it, and he just kind of slumps over, and she reaches out to feel for a pulse, and there's no pulse. And she basically starts crying, and then it fades into sometime in the future where Polly is getting married.
10
And
years. It's 10 years.
is it 10? Okay,
Yeah,
I couldn't remember how
I
many.
remember that.
And so the mother is having a conversation with Polly, and Polly says, "Thank you for letting me get married in our home." And
It's the
then
anniversary of his death, too.
and it's the anniversary of her father's death as well. And which I thought was a little, I guess they were trying to make something happy
Yeah.
coincide with the day that he passed away. Um, and because the mother says, yes, it's right that we're doing this.
He would approve. I think she said that, right?
I think something to that effect. So then after they have the conversation, Polly goes on to spend some time with her husband, and I'm going to leave it right there and let TJ talk about this a little bit.
So, yeah. Deborah Harmon's got a lot of. She's really good in this. She basically is the main person in this. Like, she holds everything together. Because she gets a lot of good lines. Like, she talks about when he's like, "Oh, it's probably a wrong number." She's like, "I know it's a family member. I know that I don't know who it was, but I know it's somebody I feel who it was. I know it was somebody I know." And it's a family member, and they have this. It's just she's got a lot of for such a small role in something that was just like a one-off thing. This also was like a year before Just Attendants came out, and I'm wondering if they saw this episode. I was like, oh, she's a great mom, and she's a great
great mom character.
Yeah, and then at the end where so we get to it's 10 years after the father dies. At the beginning she's like, oh yeah, he always thinks he has a brain tumor, and every headache and is he's got a brain tumor, and he's a little sick. And then later, before he sits down to watch the movie, he's got a little bit of a cough, but it's like it kind of fits in the whole fact that he hasn't been feeling well. So when he dies, at the end, and then it's 10 years later, and she's like, yeah, your father would have wanted this, and it's the right thing to do, and so she finds the videotape that he had recorded, and we get some more Dawn of the Dead footage in there.
If you didn't get enough earlier, you're gonna get some more.
Yeah, it's mostly like it's just some shots of like, it's mostly like it's the scene where like the zombie is like when they're walking through the store, and the zombie's like pretending it's a mannequin, and that's that scene, and there's like.
Do they show like the screwdriver in the?
They don't show the actual scene, but they get to that point. Like they cut it before you see any. You don't see any of the gory stuff, but you get enough of Dawn of the Dead that you like. If you know the movie, you know what I think there's like. Yeah. I'm trying to remember that. Yeah, it cuts like right before. Well, it's. Oh yeah, no, I'm actually looking at it. They actually do show the whole. I didn't realize that they actually show the whole.
Okay, so
and then the blood pooling up. I was like,
maybe okay. I just imagined it, but
no. All right, yeah, I didn't think they would go all the way through, because that's a pretty bloody for late night television. Also, it's on a TV filmed, so it's already kind of blurry and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, okay, they did show that. Okay, that's what I was like slowing down for. Anyway, so she's watching the movie and then she starts remembering that because it was recorded back when he died. So she sees flashes of him and stuff, and she starts crying, and she gets compelled to reach over and grab the phone, and she starts dialing, and she's crying, and we hear her, and if you remember the beginning of the episode, it's the same voice saying,
yeah,
it's trying to get out the words, but it can't, and then it's finally screaming, take him to the hospital. He's gonna take Bill to the hospital. He's gonna have a heart attack. And then we see flashes of the past, and between the two, with her just like finally getting out the words that the phone call didn't get before she hung up, or before the phone died at the beginning of the thing, and she realizes, I called the old house, and she cries, and she's crying, and she calls the number again, and you get one of those, what they used to get back in the day when it was a phone was no longer in service. It's like, you have reached the operator. The phone has been disconnected, and it just ends with her crying, and yeah, it's a pretty strong ending to that episode. That's another thing too. It's like that's a strong ending.
Yes,
it's fantastical, but it's not too crazy, and it's like in grief. You could kind of see that happening, and so it's got all these things to it. So it does have a supernatural aspect, but it's all these things, and it all works really well, I think.
It's a very intense episode. I feel like too the whole way through.
Oh, and that's another thing with her acting. When she finds her husband, it's like it's to a point where if she went a little too above, it would get goofy and
kind of campy.
It would have got campy, but I think she pulls it back just at the right time.
Yeah, it seemed at the level she was, it seemed chillingly realistic. Like a real woman has found her husband dead.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a realistic reaction.
He's overly made up, like he's slightly pale, but it's like they could have gone Dawn of the Dead and made him like
they could have, yeah, which
would have made sense since they had that in there. But I think that would have made it too like campy and goofy. It
would have fit in, right? Yeah. So I could talk about this episode all night, but I won't. But that is a fantastic episode. Highly recommend it. And I think TJ does too. So
it's a clapper. You clap at the end of that one.
So that brings us to the last episode we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah. And that is payment overdue. And I think we need to let all debt collectors watch this episode.
Really?
I say that.
This works today, this episode, because of what's...
And, somebody that's in this episode, I'm not going to tell the character they played just yet, but he played the cop in He Knows You're Alone.
Yes.
The main.
Yeah, beat me to it.
Sorry about that, TJ.
That's okay.
So, but I am going to let TJ talk a little bit about the payment overdue episode.
Yep. So it's about, what the hell's her name? It's about Jeanette Simpson, who is a bill collector, and we had an episode where we had Mary, who, she wasn't a bad person, but she was a catfisher. Jeanette is a gaslighter. And she uses her gaslighting to get people to pay their bills. And she doesn't care if you're poor or sick or you have you just accidentally forgot to pay. She wants you to pay, and she'll bring her lawyers into this, though they never do. She says it a few times. She's like, I always say we'll bring a lawyer in, but we never bring anybody in because people always pay. They don't
Yeah, because she scares them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and she seems, and she's the point at the beginning where she's talking to her boss, and she's really good at her job, but she's been in. I guess she's new to being in town, because he's like, you should get out and meet people, because all you do is stay in and work.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't really. I'm gonna guess she doesn't really like people.
Not a people person, no.
Yeah, she's a good over the phone dealing with people, but she's not as bad. She's not like Mary, where she's just terrible. Like she does have a situation with a person, but like I said, she doesn't want to really make friends with everybody. She gets a call on her private phone, and it's a voice, and it's someone. She's speaking broken English, and you can't really understand what she's saying, and she's like, I have to pay pay the bill. I have to pay my bill, and she's like, who are you? Why are you calling? How'd you get this number? Why are you calling? Don't call this number. And then she ends up calling. She calls her work, I think, and she says, and this is another point about her character, is she's slightly racist, or
Yeah.
let's just say she's racist. It slightly is a
This probably wouldn't get made either today.
yeah, because what she says is, well, then again, to show how bad she is, maybe it kind of makes sense, but so she's like, this woman called, and I don't know who gave her number. Maybe one of the other maids gave her. She said she's basically, maybe one of the cleaning ladies gave her the number. And that's kind of like, because she has an accent. She knows cleaning ladies. That's
Yeah.
just shows what kind of person she is. She's not a nice person, really. So this guy comes. So she gets a couple of these phone calls, and she's getting weirded out about them. And this guy shows up. Michael Nelson, not the guy from Mystery Science Theater 3000, but another Michael Nelson. And he's come to pay off a debt, and the debt is from this woman who has been calling. And she first thinks it's a joke, and he's like, "No, this is my job. I settle people's situations with other people, and he phrases it a certain way, so it's kind of weird. It's just a weird way. He's very nice. He's overly nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's explaining things to him, and she's like, "Well, I'm not that type of person." He goes, "Of course you're not. You're not that person. You wouldn't be that person." And he says it matter of factly, but it's the way he says it. It's odd to me.
Yeah. Something's a little odd about this guy.
And as I was watching it, I didn't know exactly. I forgot the ending for a minute, so he kind of fooled me for a second. So that's why I was like, if I'd seen this for the first time, I wouldn't have been too. I'm giving spoilers away by saying that. But anyway, so anyway, he's like, he's trying to help her out. He's like, well, let's figure out what's going on, and she's really scared. And they have sort of a conversation about her life and stuff, and she's talking about her. It sounds like she had an abusive father, and she was in a bad relationship, which ended, and that's kind of why she's not really into. She doesn't want to meet people in person, and she doesn't want to go out and try to make friends with people because she has a trusting issue. So, yeah, she's gaslighting and racist, but she's a character. She's not just a one-dimensional, because a lot of these Darkside episodes, these people are very one-dimensional, and I think those are lesser episodes where you don't really. Not everybody has to have a backstory of why they're a jerk. Some people can just be a jerk, and so some of those episodes work, but some of them are like, you need more. And I think this episode, it's a subtle thing. They don't beat you over the head with her. But they make you not really like her.
Yeah.
Even though we know a bit about her and why she's that way, doesn't mean you have to like somebody because you know why they're like that. they, maybe they could rise above that. But that's neither here nor there with the story. So she's afraid, and she's like, all right. She's like, would you like to stay for dinner? So Michael stays for dinner. And then she's like, would you sleep over, basically? She's like, we don't have to do anything. I'm not saying, I'm not inviting you over to have sex. And he's like, that's another point where he's like, oh, I understand that. I know you're not doing that. I'm like, okay, you seem to know a lot.
Almost too much.
Yeah. So she gets another call, and this one's more intense. And she's like, I have an unpaid bill, and the Michael, the angel, my angel will come, and Michael will fix all this, or something like that, or Michael will make you see what you've done, or something like that. And she freaks out. She has this up-to-date equipment for her job, because she's basically, this is funny foreshadowing to people working at in their homes, which I don't know.
Yes.
She has a whole system set up with the computer and the phone, and it's like she's got some high-tech equipment for 1987 or whenever this was. So she starts like cutting up the wires and busting in her answering machine, and then she starts. And then the voice just doesn't come from the phone; it comes from other things in the house too, like from a TV or a clock or something like that. And
yeah, some of the other, I guess, electronic devices in the house or apartment.
So Michael wakes up and he's like, what's going on? He's sleeping through her, bashing her. She's smashing things with sticks, and she's breaking all this, throwing things around, and he's sleeping through the whole thing. I think I would be able to do that too, but this is Tales from the Darkside, so him sleeping through that's kind of a weird thing to happen.
She's turning into the members of the band The Who.
Yeah,
in their instruments, and he's sleeping through it. Yeah.
So he's like if Guns N' Roses was in a hotel and Slash was sleeping in the corner while they were all trashing the place and throwing the beds out the windows and shit. Like have happened in if you watch those old rock video documentaries, and they talk about the things they did. I don't know. Even the Go-Go's, they trashed their rooms too.
Really?
So, yeah. People thought they were the cute 80s band. No, those girls were doing it as hard. They were doing the drugs, and they were drinking, and they were partying and having sex with guys, and they were doing, the Go-Go's were just as bad as like Poison and Rat and all those, except no one ever knew that stuff, because back then they were
they were thinking that's a girl band,
Yeah. So so anyway, he wakes up and he's like, what happened? And she's like, I got the phone call again, and it's from her name is Rita Valdez. I think that's what it was.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, why? She's like, I don't know. I didn't do anything to her. I don't know why she's haunting me. It's because if it's her, it's a ghost, right? So he's like, well, let's figure out. Do you record all your calls? And because earlier on she recorded like one of her calls, and he's like, do you record your calls? And she's like, yeah. How would you know that? Well, you must have a log of it. So we find a log. He finds a log in her personal stuff, and he's looking it up, and she's like, well, the computer's broken. Well, he's like, oh, let me fix that. So he gets the two cut wires, and he puts them together, and it's like, how did he do that? So he plays back the call, even though the equipment shouldn't work, but it does, and he plays back the call, and it's basically one of her calls where she's like, hey, you have to pay your bill, and Rita's saying things like, he's like, well, we'll have to bring the judge into this, and she's like, no judge, no judge will kill, and things like, I don't understand the big words you're saying, and my head hurts, and I'm sick, and I don't understand you. And she's doing the whole, well, you need to pay your bill, and she's like, and so she's saying all this and she does her thing with we never bring the authorities into this, even though she threatens to do that. And he's like, well, you're saying all these things. Well, she killed herself because of everything you did, because she had no money. She bought a washer and a dryer because she was a refugee, because her husband was killed, where San Salvador. I don't know where she was from exactly, but so she was a refugee, so she didn't have any money, and she had to buy washer. She had to buy a washer and dryer, which is what Jeanette was trying to get her to pay off, which she didn't have the money, because she bought a washer and dryer so she could do clothes for the neighbors and make some money washing clothes and doing that stuff. And she lived alone, and she had no furniture, and she had nothing, and except a phone and a table and chair. And yeah, so he's telling her all these things, which I guess he would know, because he's there to settle her debt. And oh yeah, he's there to settle her debt, all right. And that's where I'll stop talking if you want to say anything else about the episode.
Well, I think TJ covered all the high points, which is not a big deal at all. But
there's a lot going on in this episode too. It's like,
yeah, I like this episode, but this episode deals with a lot of dark material, dark subject matter, and it's not a feel good episode by any stretch of the imagination, because you got this in my opinion, you've got this heartless bill collector who, I had an uncle that he was one of those guys that, and I don't want to say my uncle was heartless, but you have to be a pretty hard-nosed person to do this. He was the guy that would turn your electric off in the middle of the dead of winter if you didn't pay your bill. And it didn't matter if you were old. It didn't matter if you were sick. It didn't matter. If you didn't pay your bill, he was going to send somebody to turn your electric off. And it could be 30 below zero, and it didn't matter. That was his job, and that's what he did. So, I didn't hate my uncle. I could hate this character in the show because she wasn't a real, that character wasn't real. But I understand that there are people out there that's what they do as a job. That is a job I could never have, is trying to force people to pay bills. I'm just not that kind of person. So this episode makes me sad in a lot of ways, watching it. But there is a little bit of a redemption to the episode, which is also part of the twist, which I'm going to turn it back over to TJ to talk about.
So, wait a minute. So we get her trying to rationalize everything that happened, that she's not really... she didn't know all these things. She didn't know she was sick. She didn't know she was a refugee. She didn't know all this stuff. But Michael is like, yeah, well, you didn't know, but you didn't do anything to help her either.
Right.
But now the debt has to be paid. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, I'm here to settle her debt. Because So one of the things... when he had, let me go back to when he had shown up, he's like, oh, I'm here to settle her debt. I have a check. I also have this card, and it's like the angel Michael or something that's supposed to, it's this angel that's supposed to, it's a redemption thing where it's supposed to make the person who wronged you feel what you felt. And
Is he supposed to be the Archangel Michael? Is that what he's supposed
He's an angel, Michael. I don't know if it's specifically the archangel. I
to
don't remember the dialogue.
be?
All we know is it's her angel Michael is supposed to go and take care of her, so her soul can rest. Is what the whole point is, and he's there to the payment is overdue on her. That's what the title is. It's not about it's not necessarily about Jeanette being her job. It's about the payment is overdue for her. She has to pay for what she did to Rita.
Yes.
And Michael is there to not revenge, but exact, justice for Rita, justice for what happened to her. And obviously Jeanette thinks he's crazy, but he is the Michael that Rita was talking about on the phone. And so he's like, well, you have to pay I'm here to make you pay for what you did. And he doesn't say it like that. He says it, he's very nice about it. He's like, you did wrong and you have to take care of what you have to, take care of your loose ends here and basically make up for what you did, but you're not making up for what you did. You're being punished is what's happening. So he basically slowly takes everything away from Jeanette. She's like, you have this beautiful apartment with this furniture. Rita didn't have this furniture, and the furniture disappears. And this beautiful, because earlier on, Jeanette mentions this beautiful view that all the apartments where she lived have. He takes down the shades. Well, Rita didn't have this view. She had a view of a wall, and this factory and whatever. And she didn't have this beautiful. See how it's quiet in here, and you have this air. You have central air, which he brought up earlier. Rita didn't have central air. She had no heat. She had the freeze in the winter, and she had to be squelching hot in the summer. So her air conditioner disappears. He's like, you have this beautiful view. Rita didn't have this view. Clothes. He takes off her robe, and she has these. She's like old, hand-me-down, like muumuu type, sleeveless, house coat type of thing, right? It's a house coat, I think. And she didn't have any furniture, and she had nothing. She had this table and a telephone, and everything disappears, and magically a table and telephone disappears. And then she's just like, no, this is, you drugged me, you hypnotized me, you're making me see things. Oh, and that voice, Rita didn't have that voice. And then he touches her neck, and then she starts speaking like Rita in this accent, and which I was like, ooh, that too is cringy. But anyway, it fits for the story. So it makes sense in this capacity. And she starts talking in broken words, and then he taps her on the head, and like, now she, oh, my head hurt, no. And he's basically making her feel everything that Rita had to feel before Rita killed herself. And he's like, now the payment has been, now the debt has been paid. Now everything has been paid. And he disappears, and she gets a phone call, and it's the phone call that she had made to Rita, and the phone slips out of her hand, and it just ends with her in the chair in the big room with nothing but the table and the big wall behind her, and the noise from the cars because she's right near the highway and whatever, and it ends.
Yeah. So, again, a dark episode, a very dark episode, but also a little bit of redemption depending on how one would look at it. I think there's redemption because the angel was able to get redemption for Rita, who was no longer around to get any sort. I hesitate to call it revenge, I feel better calling
Yeah.
it some redemption, because
Yeah,
this
that's
doesn't
perfect.
seem like a revenge story, especially since you have an angel involved in the uh, the whole thing. So
Angel, you know.
exactly. So we have officially reached the end of the first part of the final season of Tales from the Dark Side. TJ's going to throw a party when we finally get done with it.
There was some good episodes. It's like
Yeah.
for the first half, this was pretty good, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think there was like one not great episode, but for the most part, they were pretty good.
Right.
The beginning of the next one is an interesting.
Oh, that's going to be a wild one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy episode.
But guys, normally I would stay on here and rap for a while.
No, even for 10 episodes, we did go on for as long as the last one.
I did tell Wes, he did send me a StreamYard link, and I'm gonna try. I'll probably get in on the tail end of it, but at least I'll be there for
Happy birthday for me.
Okay, yes. And I want to thank everybody that was in here tonight in the chat. I want to thank TJ for being my co-host once again for this.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
Thank you, Blissful.
Oh, thank you, Blissful. And on that note, I'm going to skedaddle on out here for the night, and I think TJ is too. Are you going over to check out CK's birthday bash, or?
I might see if I don't. Like I said, I don't know is it on YouTube or is it on?
Yeah, I mean it's.
I'll go to Facebook Live. I don't know.
Yeah, it's showing up on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
See it on YouTube. So anyway, I'm going to skedaddle on out of here for the night, and I will see everyone on the flip side. And remember, Dawn of the Dead is in.
Remember, Dawn of the Dead is the one.
Good night, everybody, and good night, TJ.
Good night, Dana. Bye.
Bye-bye.